Hello, everyone, and welcome to Drawing Down the Stars. We're the Occult Explorers. I'm Snappy, and we're here with our co-host, Dion the Barber. Do you want to say hi, Dion?
Hey, glad to be here. Glad to be here.
Dion's just at work. He's a security guard, so he can't be with us in picture form, but he's going to be shooting the shit with us.
Nice.
And tonight we are joined by our wonderful friends and guests. We have Neil of Gnostic Informant, and we have Ammon of Lady Babylon. And tonight we're going to be talking about basically the origin of Lucifer, Lucifera, and this concept of Satan and the devil. And the idea we were throwing around is we want to kind of take a two-pronged approach to this. So first we're going to start by kind of talking about the devil and Satan within the Bible and this idea of Lucifer in the Bible. And then we're going to want to pick Ammon's brain about these light-bringing deities and what Venus and the morning star represent within the Greek tradition. So to begin with, Neil, do you want to just talk about the devil in the Bible, since you've just been doing this amazing deep dive and you're getting ready to release a video on the subject?
Yeah, you had this character, Diablos, this opposer character, the devil, who's coming out of this he comes out of this idea of one of the, I guess I'm gonna go with the book of Job. Let's start with that. Because in the character in this character Satan in the book of Job, he's described as basically as like one of God's, not sons, because you have the sons of God that are there. Well, actually, it starts out as the sons of God and appeared in front of Jehovah, and Satan was there. So you're like, okay, it's not really opposing him or anything. He's just kind of hanging out there. He's just kind of, and he's like basically talking to Yahweh about this guy Job, and they're making bets on him, and they're just basically cracking jokes about this dude. Job, he ain't nothing. Listen, kill his whole family. Let's see what he does after that. Let's see if he still praises you at that point. So the takeaway from this, what I'm getting at, is that this character Satan originally is just sort of on the scene. Is not really the polar opposite devil character that you get later on. What happens is when Judeo-Christianity becomes grand in its presence in the Roman Empire, paganism becomes the enemy. So Satan embodies all of these pagan deities: Hades, Bacchus, Apollo, Night, Nyx, all of that. Venus is Lucifer. Like, that's not the idea. Lucifer is the planet Venus. We know that. So I'm jumping ahead now, but I want to bring it back to this idea of Satan in the Bible, in the Old Testament, in the New Testament. He sort of takes on this character over time and becomes the Lucifer that all four of us come to revere right now.
Right, like when you were just talking about in the book of Job, he's more sort of a lawyer type, and he's kind of regarded as God's friend, almost like an equal, right? Someone who you can chat with, which is sort of weird. But then later on, right, we get these things. Like, I remember specifically when I was in evangelical Christianity, they'd bring up, there's this passage, I think it's I'm trying to remember, there's one in Ezekiel where they talk about Lucifer, but when you read it in context, it's a king. But the Christians use this to talk about some kind of cosmic evil that's coming to destroy people and whatnot. Do you know anything about that, Alan?
Yeah, King of Tyre, right? Yeah, gorgeous. It's just so beautiful. Wait a minute, stop. Satan. Oh, it makes me so mad. There's one huge fallacy that everybody buys into. It's just a part of the system. We talk about the Hebrew Bible, right? And we say, this is from Shaitan, and it means X. And no, that is an argument. It is not evidence. The evidence we have is that earliest Greek text. So I thought Neil hit on it beautifully when he started talking in his interview that he just had about kurios. What's the kurios? You know, like, is this where they're calling Yahweh Yahweh? Kurios. And what does it mean, kurios? It has such an incredible cult history, the term kurios. We translate it as Lord. And you'll know somebody who doesn't do classics when they just say Lord. It means Lord or Master. No, it doesn't. It's an epithet of Zeus. It's an epithet of Zeus. And I'm not talking about Zeus in the heavens. I'm talking about Zeus. Any position, the king of the underworld is called Zeus, right? He's called the Chthonian Zeus.
Mm-hmm.
So this position, this kurios, it's a title for Zeus, and it's a title for specifically for the gods that are in the Lightbringers cult. And those gods are starting out with that sun, that Apollo, right? People are like, what? Apollo is the god of prophecy and healing. Yeah, he is that light. He is that sun, right? This is an older religion. It's pre-Hebrew. This is that old Pulaskian astral religion. That's where Lucifer comes from, is that old astral religion. But that word kurios that you say is how we translated. See, because you accept the fallacy. It's a translation of a Hebrew original. No, it's not. Nothing says that anywhere. It's a made-up story. We have this document called the Septuagint. We know roughly when it arises. And that Septuagint is describing a kurios. Did you know Isis? Isis is the kurwa, the kuria, right? I'm trying to emphasize that old Mycenaean digamma in there. The korwa, that's what you call the queen of the underworld that resurrects. You don't call her by her name because it's forbidden to pronounce it. Does any of this sound familiar to anyone? Right? And here she is, this korwa from that old Mycenaean. And why would you call her? Why would you give her that epithet? Right? It's functioning in the religion already. Already, by the time the Jews and Christians become enwrapped in this mystery oracle, yeah, by the time their history is suddenly, you got Moses, and he's holding up snakes and he's saying, I got a tent where you can talk to God. Right before all of that happens, you have the Kuria who carries the Lord. So I think you can only see Lucifer against that background. Against that background. I think Neil was right to bring it up. And in that interview, Neil, she said she's out of her purview, right? She said she was out of her area. She's very, like academics who are very careful. She stepped out and she said, oh, this is getting on the linguist side. She knows there are classicists who do the language, right? So, yeah, I think we can see him in the lights of that old Saturnian religion. And Ewadzo, anyway, I want to talk about Ewadzo.
No. You just said something that's important, though, because this Septuagint comes out of Egypt. The devil at that time period is Set. So you have a character who's Set, the storm god in this desert. He's the desert god. And the Saturnian Bronze Age ancient religion is people in Alexandria are studying this stuff. They know what this is. They don't need it's not. People say, well, how do you get a lot of people say, how do you know? Where's the evidence that they knew about these ancient? No, this is Alexandria, Egypt. They have this. They know this stuff. So the Saturnian idea of this Bronze Age mystery religion, worshiping the stars, the moon, the planets, that stuff comes into Egypt, and it's no doubt in my mind influencing this Septuagint stuff. And the Septuagint seems to be it seems to be coming out of this, in my opinion, it comes out of the skepticism line from Pyrrho of Elis, who was one of the people who followed Alexander the Great to India. After that was over, he settled in Alexandria, Egypt, and was the teacher of Hecataeus of Abdera. So where is he getting his information from? From these people who traveled the world, talking to gymnosophists, and they're trying to put together a one world religion. That's the whole point of the Septuagint. They're trying to put everything together. You know what I mean?
Yeah, amazing. And like, it's great that you bring up this Chronos thing, because we see clear allegories with Satan to Chronos when but what they do is they take it and they kind of reduce the myth of Chronos into something that's like an evil caricature of itself, right? So they take something that's a complex understanding of like the violent elements of nature and this understanding of separation. And that is scary. That is terrifying. But like when you understand it in the Greek context, it makes sense. It's a part of a dynamic worldview. But the Christians inflate it and reduce it into a cartoon.
Yeah.
I loved I love the fact that we were talking about the personality. Like what kind of, you guys mentioned Job and him being there, the accuser being there doing his law thing, right? When he's there and he's in that assembly of the sons of God, right? And they assemble there at that moment of dawn. If you don't recognize occult context going on here, you think you're one of those people who believes a fairy tale that says mythology comes about by people sitting around making up stories. I hate to blow your world, but it doesn't, right? The mythology that we get comes through the religious cult rites that the Dionysiac religion is bringing into Athens, right? As that procession lands in the theater, that's what's coming out of that. That's how those terms are getting to us. So we're getting these within cult contexts. And if we want to say, yeah, what is he doing there? He's free to assemble, right? Think about it. I thought this was a beautiful point you guys brought up. Well, who is this guy? And what is he doing standing there? He's standing at this assembly, and he is able then to pull resources into his own realm, into his own place of functioning, and destroy this guy. And so it's a really kind of delicate interplay. The Dawnbringers, and this is straight from the Greek then. If you step and look into the Greek cult, that is what the Dawnbringer is. That Dawnbringer is right there at the gate, right, of Olympus. You don't penetrate those ethereal gods. You don't enter them without the Dawnbringer. So
I'm going to ask you about this, Ammon, because so I'm trying to get this understanding of the Lightbringers. So you have Venus, the morning star, right? The mother goddess. And then you have these Lightbringers, these torchbearers, they're almost, right? And you have the original torchbearer, that's Prometheus, but you also have Dionysus with his Thyrsus. Then you have the twins, Apollo and Artemis. And there may be others that I'm missing. I think there's a couple of these daimonesses that are also described as Lightbringers. What are the function of these deities? What do they do? Like Prometheus comes and gives fire. Apollo comes and brings inspiration on the beams of light. Artemis kind of shows you the way out of the woods. What's the revealing that's happening here? Can you elucidate?
I think the cult of Diana from in the Taurians in the Crimea, I think it shows that most brilliantly, because she is the Lucifera. She is that one who brings, and she becomes that further as her cult moves into Italy. She becomes that light bearer, and it's people think it's strange that a god who's characterized by killing would become the one who brings that light, right? That revelation. And it's not odd. It's part of the death, resurrection mystery that they're doing all over the world. It's part of that mystery. And for everything in the agency. Remember, people say, well, why at Eleusis are there these groups of Bacchants, right? And there's Iacchos, and there's the association. There's a direct association with the Eleusinian mysteries. The Bacchic cult drives, it gives you the machinery to cause the Eleusinian mysteries to operate. It's like the transmission of your automobile, right? If that's the case with the cult of Bacchus, the cult of Diana is bringing the light, the dawn. It's really the eos, is bringing the eos to the right. It's putting it within its, if we're Bacchants, we're not necessarily assembling right at dawn, right? This is the product of that astral Bronze Age religion where we're coming together to honor that Venus. Yeah, and that Venus, that morning star, it's the opening of the new, the destruction of the old and the opening of the new ion. And so, what are the Dawnbringers there for? The Dawnbringers are there to herald the collapse followed by the opening, right? Which, okay, if you want to just be concrete about it, the people are sitting around doing this in antiquity, and they're doing it at dawn, and they're explaining to themselves the origin of how the, everything works. So yeah. I don't
amazing.
think. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, so there's this like clear understanding with these figures of this revelatory of the processes of the natural world. You learn to understand and embrace the cyclic nature of your reality, it seems, with a lot of these mystery rites, and that seems to be their function. And I just want to ask Neil about this, because I know you've done deep dives in Prometheus and whatnot. When I look at that figure, and then you look at Satan and Job, they're behaving in the same way. Prometheus is challenging. He creates man, and then he wants to give man the fire against Zeus's wishes, right? And you have that similar kind of challenge that's happening, I think, in the Bible. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, there's a reason why Pan becomes the image of the devil. Pan, and this is where I want to ask Amon on, because I'm putting this in my video, and I hope if I get this wrong, corrected now before I put the video out. That word Pan means all.
Yeah.
Pan is all. There's a reason why Pan and Apollo are a band together, where you see when Ovid's telling his tale of the metamorphosis, every couple pages he reminds you that Pan is with Apollo. He's playing the flute, and Apollo's got his lyre, and they're having contests. And King Midas, with his golden touch, he can't handle it anymore. What do I do? Oh, go and dip yourself into the river Hebrus, the same river that Orpheus just bled to death into, and that's where it's going to heal you from your golden touch. And then as he's walking away, he sees once again, for the fifth time, Pan with his flute and Apollo, and they're playing their music up on the hill, up on the earth, on Gaia. So there's these chthonic, these earth deities, these nature deities. We are who we are. There's nothing to reject. It doesn't matter what you are, who you are. It's about being who you are. It's about accepting and saving the world, not rejecting the world. So there's a reason why Pan, who has a grotto in the middle of Israel, where the gateway to Hades, they say, if you follow that hole right there and keep going, you'll make it to Hades. They said Orpheus himself went down into this grotto to go find his wife. This is it. Pan's grotto in the heart of Nazareth. The Galilee. That's where Pan's grotto is. So there's a reason why that is. Pan is all.
It's amazing that you bring Pan into this, just the way you were talking about it, because a while ago I was talking to Ammon about some dreams, and I was saying I was scared, and he's like, you got to embrace the panic. And then I was I've been doing all this research into the sacrifice, And I've been starting to understand what this is about, right? The sacrifice and all of this ritual is to induce this understanding of the all. It's to force you to experience that. But to do that causes panic, because what happens? The self is dissolved in the one, right? In the one, there is no self. So it's terrifying. And you have to engage with the sacrifice, because it's only through proxy that you can do this while you're alive, you know?
Wow. And that's the thing, is like the idea of the Judeo-Christian Islamic heaven. I'm just going to throw the hyphen in both of them. Judeo-Christian Islamic heaven. This idea that if you follow these laws that Moses got from Allah, or whichever version of the book you're reading, the Arabic, the Christian, whatever, they're all the same. It's the same God. It's the same force of energy that they're all trying to submit to, right? Their idea of heaven is actually what hell really is. Who wants to sit there all day going like this for eternity? Oh yeah, I'm so glad you saved my soul, Yahweh. Thank you. Who wants that? That's hell. Once you realize that, you're free. Once you realize
That's hilarious. That's hilarious. Snappy, can I jump in? I never thought of it that way. Really, that's captured my mind. I had a really funny story of an attorney who sat, a very expensive attorney for a university, sat over me in 7 hour deposition, my deposition. And he's standing there, he says, "You mind if I see your tattoos?" My lawyer's like, I object. Right? And he calls me he says, "Are you the god Pan?" He asked me that right off the bat. And it so shocked me. I was sitting there, I was like, wow, this is the greatest moment ever, because I had to consider what he meant by the god Pan. And my lawyer is entering the objections with the court reporter, right? There's no judge, so you can't stop the proceeding with an objection, but you can have the objection noted. And I looked over at my attorney, and I realized, oh my God, it's his image that he's impressing. And I tried to correct the image to let him see who that Pan figure was. And he went on and asked me. It's in the Orphic hymn to Pan, right? It calls Pan Zeus Hokerastes, the horned Zeus.
wow.
The horned Zeus. Okay, so
again, dude.
Yeah. I know, Neil. It's obvious, right? Why does nobody read this stuff?
You just got to read it. Yeah.
Yeah. And it calls him Payan, which is the name that they use. It's really more of an epithet than a name. It's like a shout. It's a holy shout. That's for Apollo, right? That's Apollo's name.
He's the band.
Yeah, he's right there. And they give him the title Phaisphore, which is dialected for phosphoros, right? That bringer of the light. He's one of the bringers of the light, and he's the cosmocrator. So you're going to see these titles associated with Jesus when he calls himself the morning star. He's taking that Saturnian title. He's saying, I am the light bringer, right? I am the light bringer. And in doing so, he's taking on a whole bunch of ancient mystery that we don't, as modern Christians, we don't see, and we're not going to see through religious historians who don't go down to the language, because the language is the preserved evidence. So when you're describing Lucifer, you got to realize he is that horned Zeus. Right. And that has a very specific, originally that horn is that God's power. It contains, sometimes they say the lightning is contained within it. Right. So again, think of those people anthropologically sitting there doing this right. Who to them is this horned Zeus? Right. Well, of course, when the Christians are trying to differentiate themselves, right, they're going to say, look, you're talking about the worship of the guy who sits on the throne of the underworld, of the Chthonian. Yes, it's why Jude is saying there are those of you who are doing these practices from the throne of of the devil or Satan, right? So how I wish we could see the actual, like, where is this God fitting into the right? And why is he associated with certain things like the serpent? One of the things, Neil, you said personality of the devil, like what kind of person is he? What about the whole association with the serpent? Because we know the text says that that serpent was the wisest, right? Wait a minute. What? It's not like people think, again, fairy tale, they think, because the way it's been translated, they think, oh, well, it's just talking about one animal wiser than another. No, it's not. Right? Right?
This gets interesting. I want to throw in some comparative kind of stuff here. So I'm going to throw in some of our Indian tradition. Within the Indian tradition, you have this this image of the linga, which is the phallus. Okay. Now it's important. If you really understand that symbology, it reflects the Orphic egg. Okay. You see the phallus, it's wrapped by a pedestal of snakes. Okay. The snakes are supposed to be the Shakti, which is the feminine force, but specifically it's the force of Eros. And they understand it in the same way the Greeks do, as a force of both separation and like bringing together. So the snake is representative of that active feminine sexual force that brings in creation, that unfolds everything. This is what that snake mother is, right? And then the snakes are revealers. They're understood within the Indian tradition as the holiest of the holies. They are the ones who whisper into the ears of the rishis to tell them the tales of the Vedas.
I wonder, do they have any snake girls? Because I'm wondering, is that mothering thing there? Because if you put a kid under the influence of a cocktail of these drugs transdermally, if you're giving them the transdermal wrap daily, and you get this, we would say monstrosity, right? But
yes.
they would say this is a state. You have brought out this korwa in the person. So it's almost like all of us have a natural ability within us. We would maybe say it's genetic, that you can put yourself at a stage of your life under the influence of hormone analogs, natural substances, and you can create a transition to a new being. That's what they're looking when they say they're burning off the mortality of the child. They're doing this like right after birth, and we know that they're using chemicals while there's a fetus, right? While the woman is pregnant. So they already begun the process. Like we're talking about the pharmaceutical the revolution, the renaissance, the psychedelic renaissance that's taking place. Well, imagine if you are under the influence of drugs while you are bringing this baby to term, and its brain is interacting, like just say take a regular cannabis, right? Its brain, the baby's brain has receptors, natural receptors there for cannabis. So what are you doing to the child that you are giving this drug while he or she is developing? Then you take the child after you've spent 9 months on this labor, and then you put the child through a group, an initiation, if you will. Mm-hmm. And that involves burning off its mortality. And a lot of kids die from that. But the ones that don't, you end up with people today are afraid of trans, right? They're afraid of that transformation. It scares them, right? That you can do that, but nature allows us to do that. Right. You can take different venoms and induce the same transition. Not only that, you can induce a lot of things that are like, oh wow, I didn't know. Yes, you can lactate. You can lactate pre-pubertally, before puberty, right? And any endocrinologist will tell you. I taught endocrinology for a while. And any endocrinologist will tell you Yeah, no, it's just all balances of hormones, and you have these arcs in the brain, and your hypothalamus speaks to your pituitary. Your pituitary then regulates your growth and maturation and whatnot.
It's very
That
fluid.
cycle, yeah, can be tinkered with, right? That's the knowledge that is that forbidden.
That's
That's
it.
the black magic.
You're so
No,
right.
you're right. And I think there's a bunch of this that's going on within the Indian tradition. And you also see this within the Norse tradition and even within the African tradition. So like, bear with me because I haven't done a lot of this reading recently, but Ammon is triggering some thoughts. There's this goddess who's described as a virgin, and she is the mother of the Nagas, the snake people. Her name is Manasa, and her birth is really freaking weird. It has this whole thing where Shiva ejaculates, and then his sperm is stolen and put inside of a statue that then comes to life and is this perfect virginal goddess. So I think it could be a kind of reminiscent of what you're talking about. And then within the Shiva rites, there's all this stuff about being the like bi gender. So you have Adrinahari Ishvara, who is the Shiva that is perfectly bi gendered. But you also have Shiva as the Nataraj, which is Shiva as the cosmic dancer. And they're like more like you get these levels of femininity and such with these deities, so it's in levels of masculinity, and it kind of is in flux across how it plays. And they talk about how this changes through these rites. So could be.
Can I share my screen real quick? Do you see this? You there? Okay, you can see this, right? All right. See this? This horned. Okay, ignore my camera for a second. Just look at what I'm showing. So this right here, this oil lamp. For some reason, I'm going to share my screen one more time. I was going to share one more thing real quick. I can't tell you how many times I've come across this in my research. Is this occultic? Let's see. Where is it? Where'd it go? Okay, hold on one second. There's this occult. It's a cult thing. It's an initiation thing. Let me show you my screen one more time. This. See it in their hands? It's the same thing.
Wow.
It's always Sagittarius, and it's always horned oil lamp. And I'm trying to figure out what the hell it is, why they always have it in their hands in all these images. I'm open to suggestions.
It's probably that right.
Yeah,
it's probably that drinking vessel, right? So it's you can find in Ritu, right? And that's perfect for this word right here. I just want you to see that it's here. It's here. Right? Nobody can see that, but you can pause that. You can see the word fil in the. For this God, for this Lightbringer, this horned Zeus, that image is, that individual is the fil in theos, the one who loves to be entheotic. And that entheotic is where Carl Ruck coined his term entheogen, right? It's the fact of having a God, theos, inside you. So as soon as you get possessed, you're like a vessel, and you've taken on the water that they've poured inside of you. Well, once you're filled with that water, even after that water's been poured out, you're still a vessel, and you've partaken of that. You've become that horn from which is drunk, right? Nonus has them drinking. You can see it looks like a cup. Nonus has the Bacchants drinking from that horn the very first time they create his foamy essence, his foamy blood, which is his wine, right? That's what they're taking of that. Is that the horned God? Is it a reference? It's a reference to that God's power.
Yeah.
Definitely. But if you're going to have a world that's entheogenic, that's going to have psychedelic substances that are being thrown around and people are experimenting and involved, you're going to have a return of that horned Zeus, that power. And the Christians know this. They know it instinctively, that with these comes the association of demonic, Yeah, and that power, that demonic power, is supposed to increase as we approach the great apocalypse. So right now, they should be looking for this psychedelic renaissance to start the unfolding of the antichristos, right? It should be that which is against, that which balances the Christos. So I'm very excited for all the psychotropic, psychedelic research that's being done now and how helpful it is medically that they're finding. And you're gonna see a backlash against it.
Yeah,
You're gonna see
that's the Antichrist, what you're talking about. The idea of a Messiah, a Christ, is completely anti-human. This is why I say it's central to me that if you are hoping for a Messiah, by default, we oppose each other. We're on different sides of the coin. We're on different sides of history because the idea of a Messiah suggests that you need saving from something. That this world is so corrupt and evil that we need a savior. What do you mean? This is Gaia, baby. Gaia isn't corrupt. We don't need saving from Gaia. We need to protect Gaia. So I need to be an antichrist and reject a savior. I don't need a savior.
Look what they've done, though. For this kind of insanity to exist, what they've done is they've perverted the mystery rites. They've denied us our understanding of death. Okay, what they've done is they've created a polar world. If you talk to Christians and you talk to priests, it's all light and love. This is not the essence of these pagan rites or these pagan religions. These gods are not black and white characters. These rites and what you're doing, it's about reflecting upon yourself and growing over time and changing and embracing these natural changes in this cyclical nature of the world. The Christians and the Abrahamic religions, they reject all of this. They want to stop time. The first time it really hit for me, I met these people when I was wonderful people, but they were ultra-Orthodox Muslims. And I met them when I was traveling in India. And I was talking to them, and they told me that no, the world was perfected during Muhammad's lifetime, and that the entire purpose of our life is to preserve that perfection. And anything that is any innovation is bad. Like, these people are crazy, of course. Like, they're not representative of all Muslims, but there's this current that exists.
No, that exists.
People want to go back to this perfected, imagined reality. It's so fucking gross.
Just go to Brooklyn, United States, New York, USA, Crown Heights. It's like North Korea. They have a community there that if you're part of that community, you better not have a cell phone on you. That's no. That's Satan. You better not have the internet in your house. You better be reading your Torah. Like, my cousin lives there. I'm not just making this up. It is lockdown, North Korea style. The whole world, you cannot look. You're shut off from the rest of the world. They have one place, a cafe. I forgot the name of the street. My cousin goes there just for fun sometimes, just to check it out. You can go in the cafe and you can pay for an hour in the booth to go on the internet. He does this all the time just to see what they have. It's every website he tries to check in is blocked. So they think they have access to the internet, but they really don't. Just a couple websites, couple Wikipedia pages. That's it. So that's, and like, so like we look at, like, oh look, Saudi Arabia, oh look over there. No, it's happening right here. We have community, and not just the Jewish community. Either down south in the deep south, you got communities like this in the Protestant world. This is here in our country. These satanic I don't want to use the word satanic panic, but like the idea that the great Satan is after you is alive and well in America.
I think I ran into the guys you're talking about in Brooklyn. I used to live in Bayonne, and I would take my kids up to hang around. And we were there, and I think it was at a zoo, and one of a group of guys came up from behind me and my kids. I was showing them the snakes, and look how pretty, and I was being nice about it. And these guys walked up, and they had their garb on and everything, and so it was obvious, and they said, "Oh, look at that! Somebody looking at the devil.
Yep.
And I thought, wait a minute, what plane of reality did you just descend from? You know what I mean? But good for you, good for them to recognize, why is that they recognize this thing, this source of power, this devilish thing, this serpent, after how many thousands of years post Bronze Age, right? Do people still recognize there's something in that venom, right? There's something in that. Is this something like, this is crazy idea. You guys know me. I'm all about evidence, and I don't argue ideas or theories, right? Somewhere in the past, people used to ask me, where do we come up with all the drug knowledge? And what's the process of experimentation that leads to it? I want to know the same thing. What is the prehistoric process that brought out this close association with the venoms of the snakes? And
notice how that serpent is identified with the knowledge of healing. You don't just get medicine without knowledge. You need knowledge to learn about what medicine even is. You need knowledge. So the serpent brings you the knowledge. When I was a fundamentalist, I knew this. I knew that if I kept going down this path of the biblical God, worshiping the biblical God, I knew that knowledge was death. The Kabbalah people talk about this, how the word for Hebrew in the word for death, or the word for knowledge in Hebrew, is death. So I used to push this when I was a fundamentalist. Knowledge is death. When they took a bite from that apple, they brought death into the world. I used to push that. Now I realize that this is a degradation of reality itself. It's a degradation of life. It's a rejection of life. It's anti-life.
100% it's anti-life, but I think it's even more intense than that. Okay, we've been studying a lot of this Greek philosophy, and when I've come, I was reading this guy Klages, and look at Klages. He's obsessed with the Pelasgians, and he talks about this idea called the Pelasgian worldview, and he says the key to their entire philosophy can be summed up in this phrase: the reality of images. That it's the image that you can produce of something that is the most important. It's that which it survives beyond death. It's what you engage with. It's what exists beyond time and space. And it's not a soul, but it's kind of similar to an idea of a soul. But when you really think about it, you can notice when we look at these things, like Ammon is talking about the serpent. Why does the serpent invoke fear across history, across time and space? Because there's something intrinsic about that image itself, right? It has a living power to invoke fear and to invoke wonder, because it's that simultaneous thing. It's like embedded in our DNA. We know to fear them because if you get bit, you could die. But at the same time, that venom is a medicine when used by the right medicine workers, and we have evidence of these people from ancient times purposely injecting the venom to become antidotes, to produce antidotes. And people still do this in the modern times too.
It's gorgeous stuff. I love that from those incantations we worked on today. That's the same thing. They're talking about that venom it is a source of death. It's Thanasimon, right? Death bringer. But it is also the bringer of life and longer life, restored life. If that's the image, Snappy, the Pelasgians are so focused on, and I'm not going to disagree with that because it's great, right? And I think there's plenty of evidence, linguistic evidence, to support that by watching the roots come into the Mycenaean Linear B and then into the Greek. I think that that image is what is inspired. Remember, this is the time when we're developing language, right? And we're trying, and the Greeks are obsessed about trying to trace the origin, right? It comes from the Phoenicians. Well, no, originally it comes from the Pelasgians, then the Phoenicians, right? And then we're changing it, changing a few characters, and we're doing all of that development of the language comes from that image, the centrality of the generation of the image, the true idolatry. I would argue you can't have written language without the culture understanding the power of that, what an image does and how you're able to control. And these are people, you know, Neil was talking about the Antikythera device and whatnot. I mean, you know, these are people who are stretching it mentally out there. Why do you think the philosophy, why does Western philosophy, why does it all develop in Greece, right? Why aren't the Romans, right, coming up with it? They're powerful, right? Why doesn't, you got to ask yourself, why doesn't philosophy come out of Egypt? And maybe some Egyptologists will say, well, you know, we have the, come on, no, come on. So
you know where we see the most intense philosophy? It's India and Greece. And what do they share in common?
Mind expanding substances.
Mind expanding substances, whether it's yoga and drugs, they're doing it all. You know, they're doing it all.
That's why I take DMT so seriously. Don't mess around with this. This is gonna change your life. It's gonna expand your mind. It's gonna rewire all that shit you were shoved in there when you were growing up and when you were, you know, when you were being indoctrinated through your childhood with trauma. That's gonna tell you you're gonna go to hell if you don't do this. All that shit's gonna get rewired and fixed. So don't mess around with this. Don't lie about it. Do it for real. You know what I mean? This is some real.
Yeah.
This is some. This is the real deal. That intermediary device, which is the drug, that brings you to that state, that gives you that realization, that oracle. You know what I mean? It's nothing to be joking around or lying about or playing around with. Like, well, I'm just gonna make my own potion and just add my own things. And no. You got to do it the right way. Do it the right. Follow the path who's been there before you. You know what I mean?
So one thing I want to ask Amon about is there's this constant theme, like just expanding on what Neil says, throughout when you're reading these mystery rites and you're reading these myths, of this idea that the drugs are making them be able to perceive the world as it truly is, right? And that by going through these rites, the whole reality is changed. Can you elaborate upon that?
Yeah. And remember, it's taking place not just organically. They don't just give the drugs to the person and then just wait for something to happen. There's an actual priestess who's going through machinations. And remember, when you're under the influence of those things, imagine what it does to you in a theater, right? And we're taking the most extreme of stuff, that, like with the scopolamine that the witches are using, that's inducing a psychosis, right? So imagine what the actor then becomes. You're not just having a random hippie vision. You're not just out there on LSD and your VW bug and just seeing the flowers, right? And no, you're having a directed vision where the people talking to you are entering in as actors they're taking that force and projecting it onto you. And your experience then of the death and resurrection comes through that process, through that acting. And I know the origin of this, I would argue, is when the Magi start doing it. When that really takes off and you have interrogators, you even have Romans. Did you know you have Romans? You can check it out in Pliny, who use interrogators who are Magi. Why? Because they can tie you down. They can give you a drug and they can project onto you such a fierce, fearful image that you'll tell everything, your whole, whatever you ever did that was wrong. I think, Neil, that's the basis of, Neil's talking about potential healing. Can we just broach the subject of, you might be able to take an evangelical in the near future. You might be able to take an evangelical who has grown up. He's been in the church. He's been preaching. He's been active. And you might be able to take that person, and through one session, you might be able to bring them to a point where they see themselves and those shackles of that dogma fall off, because they can't deny that natural reality. When you're in theotic, right? That's what Pan is, that God of that ecstasy. When you're in that ecstasy and inspired by the God, that experience is a healing. It's from the sun, right? It's a healing experience. So can we heal? I guess I just wanted to throw out there, can we heal evangelicalism if you're trapped in a, Neil, listen how Neil talks about himself. I was this and I was that. Yeah, exactly. Wait, and somehow, Neil, somehow you were able to step outside of yourself at some time and say, this is bullshit, right? This is, none of this stuff is reality.
That's magic.
Yeah.
To be able to look at yourself and go, I'm wrong. I'm wrong about everything. And then reset your worldview into something the exact opposite. That's magic. It is. It's a complete transformation. It's a metamorphosis, actually.
How'd you get to that point?
That's why Ovid really focused on the metamorphosis. It's the most important thing in your life.
How'd you get to that point, Neil? How did you, I mean, I have my own places, right? And Snappy does too. But is there something special in the air that you just suddenly, you got the right combination? Because, I'm thinking, are the drugs, the entheotic state, are they just doing something that you could do naturally? You got the natural circuitry there for, or what do you think? Or, or did you fall down and hit your head and then things were different? I mean,
no, that entheot, that's exactly what it is. It's that state that smack in the face by reality from Nyx herself in that state. Who the fuck do you think you are coming here as with evangelical bullshit in the back of your, get that shit out of here. That'll happen. Get ready for that. Get ready for that experience that you're not going to like.
Did you evangelicals hear him?
Come back the next time though. And you know what I noticed about, I'm just going to get real for a second. The thing about DMT is you got some shit going on in your head that you're not right. It'll let you know. But the more you come back after fixing those things, the less anxiety this experience is, the more bliss it is, because you're becoming one. You're knowing thyself. That proverb, know thyself, that the Greeks held so dearly, is so profound, because that's the difference between having a smack in the face and a hug from Nyx when you go to that oracle. That's the difference. I'll tell you straight up, when Nero went to the oracle, what did he hear from the oracle? Matricide. He got screamed at. Nero had some shit. He had some demons that he had to deal with. That's what that is. You might hear that from the oracle. You might hear that. You might not. It depends on where you're at. It'll tell. That's the thing about these divine substances, man. They really do work. They do what they. There's a reason why people in Peru right now are on a mountain taking this and having these life changing. There's a reason why people pay thousands of dollars to go down there and do that. I think it's just for the hell of it. There's something going on there.
100%. You see these traditions that have survived, that are healing traditions, that are psychedelic. Like you just talked about the ayahuasca ceremonies. You see them happening all over the US and Canada now, and even in Europe, right? And it's not just ayahuasca. One that I was doing a lot of research in was ibogaine. And ibogaine, they do a rite, like, too bad Dion isn't here because he witnessed this in West Africa, where what they'll do is they dig the person a grave and they put them in the grave for 3 days, and they administer the drug while you vomit, and you're in this grave-like state and then you are meant to talk to the ancestors. And they've adapted these rites now into a medical clinical setting, and they use them to help people get over extreme addiction. And I've read hundreds of TRIPS reports at this point, and they all describe the same thing: meeting of the ancestors and of the self, and then basically this healing embrace that's like, it's okay, and then helping you redirect to something more healthy. But you can't make this up. Why is this so universally effective? Why are all these people having the same visions? There's something to these rites. They have survived.
And guess what? Before, I want to hear Amon's thoughts on this, but it all goes back to that serpent, a rod of Asclepius. That's what it is. It's the serpent. It's where all this is coming from. It's taking that bite of that pomegranate and chanting Iwa, Iwa, Yake, Yake, going to the mania.
And your eyes will be opened and you'll be as gods, right?
It's true. They didn't lie.
Right. Why does Jehovah not want that? Right. If I were standing there next to the devil, I'd be like, dude, just ask him this thing, right? So the sons of God have a symbol. I'd be like, dude, why didn't you want them to have it? Like, what? Not good enough? You know, you're going to keep it to yourself, right? It's almost like there's a creepy appropriation going on in Genesis.
He admits it. I'm a jealous God. And that's why and Giorgiani really was whatever you want to say about Giorgiani, he made a good point. Is that Plato plants a seed that becomes an IQ test. Plato's Timaeus is like held up as like the book of all books when it comes to theology. It's where Platonism, Middle Platonism, Neoplatonism, Neo-Pythagoreanism, they're all looking up to Timaeus as this central text to who's the one, the monad, the perfect good God. And specifically tells you he can't be jealous. He could have said anything. He could have said he's never late. He could have said he's never sorry. He's never sad. He picked the word jealous specifically to say the one thing that he can't be. The greatest good God, perfect God, can't be jealous. Septuagint, whatever. I don't care. Masoretic text, whatever it is. I'm a jealous God. There it is. That's the reason why the Gnostics knew that's not the one. That's not the monad. That's not the good one. That's the other one.
So could it turn out, guys, that, okay, if that's the case, could it turn out then that the God that we've had our poles switched, right? We've been looking at the system that creates Christianity, all the monotheisms, right? That creates this exclusive appropriating club that then turns around and kills other people who are not part of us, you know, who can't get assimilated. Is that monster really? That's the devil, right? And really the Lightbringer, who, you know, this is one of my questions that I never get answered from religious people in the religious history. Why is it that it's conceded in the Bible frequently that the devil controls this kingdom? Jesus is the Magus Jesus, you know, the pedophile Magus Jesus is standing there recognizing this power of the devil, and he has to be taken into the eremon. Notice every time in the book, the Apocalypse, whenever they're getting their visions, right before they do, somebody's dissolving a seal. And that seal is the Greek word for a little tablet that you put into your bum. It's called the trochiskos. The doctors use them. And those things are full of drugs. They dissolve. It's a suppository. It dissolves and you absorb the medication, right? And then you have your vision. And the whole time this is happening, nobody's standing back and saying, you know, why? Look at it. Look at it. It's just the pharmacy that's going on. It's not this weird world that you've created, right? The premillennialists and postmillennialists and, you know, the pre-trib people, that is all later Christian fabrication of a text that is talking about something very concrete, right? Something very down to earth. So is everything flipped? Are we in a place where everything's flipped? Yeah.
And Paul, who is a Pharisee, by the way, and he is and if you actually look into the Pharisees are basically, they're the ones who are going to become the Christians. Anyways, Satan, who is the god of this world, has blinded the minds of those who don't believe. They are unable to see the glorious light of Evangelion. They don't understand this message about the glory. He's saying Satan is the god of this world, as if this world is something that we need to reject and be ashamed of. Notice that?
100%. And I just want to get into some of the stuff that Amon was bringing up there. It was really intense. There's this thing that you're getting with I think people are misunderstanding the point of religious texts. Okay. And as a magician, it becomes very clear to me. These are magical spells for creating a idealized form of history to imprison people. Look who's writing these religious texts in almost all cases. These are the elite of the elite, right? These are the men. What are they trying to do? Establish hierarchies, establish centers of control, define a literal version of history that they can impose upon you. This is what Zeus really is. He's a kind of logical patrician who creates and establishes hierarchy. What we get out of this is hard science and buildings, but what we have lost is that freedom and equality and that connection to the natural sacred world. You know, what Zeus does is he denigrates nature. He reduces it to nothing but his plaything. And he's going to get us all fucking killed for it.
Yep.
Amen. Amen to that. The ultimate downfall by God. Thanks a lot, God, you jerk. He shouldn't have gotten divorced. Why did he get divorced in the first place?
That's why Prometheus needed to save us from him, from Zeus. Zeus was going to flood the whole world. And Prometheus is the one. And then the Septuagint tries to hide this. Septuagint tries to say that God told Noah to make a boat. No. That's not what the ancient texts say. That's not what the Sumerians say. It's not what the Greeks say. We have more sources that say there's another god. The Greeks said is Prometheus. The Sumerian said Enki. That was opposing this Enlil, Zeus, Yahweh tyrant. And he's the one who told Deucalion or Gilgamesh or whatever version of this story, because this is in my opinion, this is the story about the Black Sea region people who lived who repopulated the Pelasgians, getting into all that stuff. But this is what this myth is retelling. It's retelling this other Lightbringer is who saved humanity, not Yahweh. No.
And how does he save humanity? Through a revealing of knowledge, through the gift of fire, which does what? Inspire them to take care of themselves, right? These are very different understanding. Lucifer's not preaching. He doesn't set up laws. He doesn't tell people what to fucking do. He gives them fire and says, go have fun.
Yeah.
I love that approach, Snappy. And I think that we'd be remiss in our duty if we didn't recognize, okay, let's summon up one of those guys called the Quindecim Weary, who has the actual Sibylline books. He's actually reading them, right? Nobody else in Rome is allowed to, except for these 15 priests, right? They're allowed to. And I've on my shelf, I've got him. His name's Gaius Valerius Flaccus. And in his depiction of Prometheus, he talks about the drug of Prometheus.
Yeah.
And in the process of the vulture, right? Some people call the vulture, some people call the eagle, right? That devours his liver. He's chained to the rock and the vulture is devouring the liver. Flaccus says that vulture is Medea and that she is the one who's harvesting from him the drug.
Somebody in the comments said, I thought we don't need a savior. We don't. That's the point. The point is this. Even if, like, I'm not asking Prometheus to come and save me. No, I'm not waiting for the next Messiah to come and save me. Let's run a scenario. This is how much I oppose the Messiah. Even if the Old Testament was correct, that the only way to eternal life was to worship this 613 tyrant God, right? Even if this is the only way, I still would reject it. Cast me into hell. F you. I don't care. This is not, I've been revealed enough to know I reject that, even if it's my only option.
Because it's an imposition.
I don't want your savior. I don't need one. If Prometheus saved me, so be it. I'm not asking for that. He doesn't demand it either.
No, because
big difference.
All of this is a reduction, right? It's a dualistic reduction. It doesn't understand the truth, what's unfolding in front of us, right? Like when you really engage with the Greek mythology, you understand that even though they don't call it evolution, like you were talking about in your live stream, right? How what's his name? Aristotle almost gets to evolution. But I think you see it far more clearly just in the mythical cycles, right? You have evolutions of gods. You start out with the Titans, who then evolve into the Olympians, and then the Olympians the Titans give birth to humanity. And then there's a talk about a child to come, right? Which is going to be, in some of the text, a chimera, right? This is something that's different than we are. It's another evolutionary upgrade, right? What we understand when you look at these myths too is this idea of this corrupting nature of power, right? Okay, Uranos, at the beginning of time, gets corrupted and has to be destroyed by Kronos. Then even Kronos, who he brings about the golden age, but even he becomes corrupted over time and must be dethroned by who? Zeus, right? Zeus was at one point a tyrant killer. He was a force of good. He was necessary to bring about that change. But what's happened is it's calcified. We got his science. We got his reason. He was able to take us to this point. But now if we do not destroy him and break free from his chains and his tyranny, then he will consume us, just as Kronos tried to consume him. You know, and this is the kind of thing we're seeing unplaying.
I think that's why we need that Lightbringer, right? You need that opposing force in order to expose that corrupt phase of existence.
And just to jump in real quick, that's not a contradiction, because it's not about, well, what about, how come I can have when you can? It's about the rights, first of all, and it's about what is it that this God is bringing forth. 613 laws that say women can't dress like a man, or a man can't be with another man, or that. No, there's no contradiction there. To want to serve a Lightbringer who allows you to be who you are, to find that freedom within yourself, to be natural of what your feelings and energy brings you. There's no rejection of the self or the world at all. That's not a contradiction.
Let's go to the primordial deity, right? Within the Orphic tradition. Let's talk about Kronos. What does Kronos do, right? He just sets time in motion, right? What does he demand of anyone? One thing: adaptation. That's it, right? He's that force of change. He's that violent separating force that's forcing us forward. And the only thing we can do in regards to his violence is adapt to it, right? And eventually we'll get to that point where we have to overthrow even him. And then we'll get to return back to that monadic one. This is what's happening. That's the whole.
It's very Bacchic. That whole force is very Bacchic. And when Neil talks about eternal life, right? I want to push that. I want to push that, because within the mystery, right? You Christians, you've never read the Bible. You've never read the Bible. There's no eternal life in the Bible. It doesn't exist anywhere. There's ionic life, and that's what Jesus says he's there to give. That ionic life is a product of the functioning of the mystery. When a person comes through that death process, they've been into the underworld and they've come back. When they come back having opened the ion, or being born again, they would call it, to be reborn. And that rebirth opens up the ion, so that now you as a person are no longer living according to your old standard. You're living within the ion, right? So when people say, oh, well, the standard evangelical pitch is, this is all so that if you do this, if you have this faith, you'll end up after death being in eternal life, right? Death is conquered. There will be no end, right? So we all wait and we watch the Christians and they slump over dead, and we all say, they must be in a better place, right? They must be. That's not the ionic life of the Magi. It's not, right? They did not talk about or preach about going into a future eternity, right? Theirs was the focus upon the now, and your ionic life was what you could be born into. An awareness. It's an awareness and an ability to see that other dimension and to interact with it. So of course there's a ton of magic, right? If you have gone through a phase in your life with an initiation involving a priest or priestess, some kind of mystagogue, and drugs, and you have opened up a new experience, that is not something that you're investing for your after death. It's something that you're doing now in this world. And that transformation, people don't like that, right?
Yeah.
That forced transformation is not, oh, that's it's Pan. Shut up and ride. You know what I mean?
That's what I was
I
going
want
to
to
say.
get to. Go ahead, Neil. Sorry.
I was going to say the idea that there's this tradition of, okay, if you want to have eternal life, you got to follow these laws that are prescribed, that this prophet talked about. The idea of following those things so that you can get eternal life, not thinking about what those things are, but just knowing that you have to do them. That's a selfish act in itself. To me, you failed as a human being. The fact that you have to jump over these loops just to exist. I'm out. I opt out of this game. Do what you will with me. That's my response to it.
That sounds like Satan. That sounds just like Satan, Neil. He's standing there with God, and he's like,
"Look." Have you guys ever read the book or seen the movie Life of Pi?
Yeah.
Okay, so Life of Pi, I hate this book. I fucking hate this book because it gives you the worst kind of bullshit ending, but it sums up the fundamental issue here. Basically, the idea is Pi goes through this terrible experience, this life-altering, horrific, transformative suffering where he barely makes it out alive and he loses his mother. But he tells everyone this fantastical story, right? He paints this magical picture of what happened to him as a coping mechanism, right? And then at the end, he reveals that it is a coping mechanism and admits that it was all a lie. But he ascribes this to the same thing as religion. And then he ascribes this to this idea of a zoo, where even in a zoo, when you open up the cages, oftentimes the animals won't leave the cage because they prefer the safety of the cage. And this is what we see. There's two types of people: those who can deal with the absurd reality that we are faced with, that we are denied truth, and those who fucking can't and have to make shit up. And those who want to oppress those who can't cope with it. That's all that's going on.
Yeah, seriously. That's what those...
Can we release them? Could the three of us get together with some psychologists and some neuroscientists and some pharmacologists and bring back a rite or a process, if you just want to say it that way, to open people's minds so that they have those open eyes? Or is there going to be such a crush of movement against it? You know what I mean? That you wouldn't be able to do that. You walk into the public square today and you tell someone, or even can be online, you walk into a situation where you're talking with somebody about their Christianity, all you can do is anger them. If you tell them the facts, you don't know your religion, right? You don't know that Jesus was arrested with a naked boy. You don't know that he never promised eternal life. He promised ionic life. You don't know that he was a magus. You don't know that there were drugs involved. You don't know that there's this Bacchic mystery being performed. Before there were, you get the church historians on there and they start talking about stuff from Tertullian, right? When Jesus is doing his thing, none of those ideas are there. There is a world of the mystery, and Jesus is purposely harnessing that mystery. And the funny thing is we don't have that mystery today. It does not exist. But if we could put in the anti-mystery, right, which coincidentally the texts say is already working, right? They acknowledge the existence of this anti-mystery that can deprogram the believer. I mean, it's amazing. I don't know, we could free minds. Do you guys think that we could free? I mean, like 100%. A virus?
I mean, okay, as someone who came out of extreme religion, right? I spent a lot of time thinking about this. How do people truly break free? And how that's always a revelatory experience. People need that. They need to see the truth. And you can see that in many different ways, but there's always going to be a certain kind of person who has experienced some kind of miracle or some kind of. When I was in the Christian church, we used to get so riled up by the music and everything. It was a transformative, powerful thing. I could not wrestle with that after I left. I was like, what is this? I can't just let this go. Something like the mystery rites will put all of this in context and will show you a real experience, not a experience that has been manipulated and used to control you.
That's why I feel the really kind of bad for people who grow up in a certain tradition that tells them they're chosen. Calvinists or any it doesn't matter what religion, it's just you're the chosen one. Those are the ones who never will get out of it, because that is so hard to. It's so hard to say no. I'm not chosen. I'm not even better than the ant that I just stepped on. That is humbling to admit that your soul isn't shit compared to any other soul, any other living being, animal, whatever. To say, but you're brought up to thought you are by divine right chosen for some reason. It's actually, and it's ironic because those are the last people that'll ever escape from that cell, that prison cell in the mind. So it's actually, I feel bad for it, if that makes sense.
Well, you bring up a really interesting point about this idea of just like community, right? Like if you're going to help people get out of anything, we have to give them a way out. One thing that I see constantly is that people will say things that are just vile, or they'll say things that are extremely religious that just kind of alienate themselves. But what it does is it pushes them deeper into the group, and they turn to the group more and more as the rest of society turns their back on them because they can't deal with the ugliness. But we have to not just fully turn our backs. We have to be careful here. We have to allow people to a way out if they can come out of it.
Yeah, I agree.
And like, I just want to go back though, like when we're talking about like one of the interesting things, like I think is so key about the pagan rites and the mysteries, and what we're talking about doing here is having a personal experience, facing yourself, right? And dealing with your own kind of crap. Like if there's one thing that I'm sure you all can relate to this, anyone who's engaged with this kind of magic, the goddess is not some kind figure who's going to just hug you and tell you everything is all right. That's the last thing that's ever going to fucking happen. She knocks your head around and she tells you what you need to do. And it's like a constant, reevaluation. Like you were saying, everything's about metamorphosis. It's about growing. The purpose of life is to grow and to be a better person than you were before. And that's what these mysteries are about, making you confront these toxic elements in yourself, making you do better.
What do you guys say to the evangelical or the person who is special? I call them, Neil, special. The special people, you may want to call them chosen. But that Calvinist who believes in this weird structure of you were predestined for this, that it's almost like a narcissistic kind of appeal. You're never gonna get that person to admit, because it'll be their death. It'll be their psychological and spiritual death to agree that.
Which would be the greatest thing that ever
So
happened.
how do you? Go ahead.
I said if you're 100% right. They'll because that the idea of rejecting that idea is death, but they don't realize that death would be the greatest thing that ever happened to them. Because you could
Amen. Yes, that's exactly it. Oh my God, Neil, I'm so sorry for talking over you.
No,
did everybody see that though? Go back.
The only reason I cut you off is because what you said brought that out of me. It was Bacchus basically that cut you off. So, But this is what brings us back to the whole topic of this video, is that us three here right now, we all agree as Satanists that the idea of the Satan devil, the Diablos or Saturn, paganism incarnate, the idols, the goddess, all this stuff that is wrong and evil, the serpent, we now look at that as something to put up on the pedestal now, because that is the whole point, is coming out of that and actually walking face first into that death and saying, I don't want this. I don't follow these 613 laws. Do what you want with me. I'll be Prometheus. Put me on a rock.
My experience was I looked into everything they told me was evil, and none of it was fucking evil. Not one single thing they told me was evil was evil. And this has been such an eye-opener. Even the violence and death that they are so terrified of, that they cannot relate to, is not evil. Like we're saying, it's about transformation. What creates the child to come? The death of Zeus. You do not have the next generation without the death of the old generation. But the pagans understand, like, when they're talking about ionic life, this is about, they know that we're immortal. It's about realizing our immortality, and it's about embracing the freedom of the image. Like Klages lays this out in his book on cosmogonic eros when he's talking about the Pelasgians. He says that they raise the dead higher than the living because the dead are free. The dead they can go between the worlds. They're in that state of in between. That's what the gods are. They're the spirit, or they're the images that have yet to go to the underworld or have yet to be reborn on earth.
Yeah, and that's why you should study the physics then. Like, take apart what these Satanists, right? Which I would call the Magi, who are following this thing that comes from this mystery that comes from Georgia. They're following this thing. Oh, and by the way, Snappy, you brought up an incredible point with talking about the Indians and the Greeks is coming up with these philosophies. What is unique? I know that Sanskrit is unique on the Indian side. Is there something that these languages that are coming from this earlier Pelasgian root or Proto-Indo-European, is there something that gives you a capacity to use the brain to its extent to understand what's going on? Is there, you know what I mean? What is with it that we could take a group of those Indian philosophers, we could take a group of the Greek philosophers, and if we could make them speak the same language, like, I don't know, create a Tower of Babel, that they could really ascend and become that immortal. They could have their mortality burned off. Is it possible?
I totally think it's 100% possible. Are you guys familiar with the scholar Gary Lockman at all? He wrote this really interesting book called The Lost Knowledge of the Imagination. And what he talks about is how embedded in these ancient languages is all, if you go back, and Aman will understand this intrinsically, the ancient languages, specifically like Greek or Sanskrit, they are poetic by nature. They develop new metaphors as you work with them. They're living. They're not based upon dead prose. When we look at English, everything is metaphorical. Everything is based upon this understanding of history. These ancient languages do not have that. They invoke clear images that connect you to something that is alive. And that's what we're losing here. In our modern age, we've all been denied the ability to reflect upon ourselves, to create images in the mind. We're constantly bombarded through television and through media, and we're made to be just receptors, no longer creators, right? The ancients, these people were creating art. They were engaged in that process as a religious experience, as a transformation in and of itself. You know, when the Indian sages, when they're making these murtis, the act of making the murti is as sacred as the murti itself. And you can achieve enlightenment through that artistic creation, because it's all about these images, you know, and there's something real and living in it.
So what is Neil going to do with that? Okay, Neil, you're sitting there. You hear the description that Snappy's just given, and now you have to go on your platform and you have to bring that Lucifer forward, that Dawnbringer forward. Where do you go? I mean, I don't know. Can we just have a preview of? I mean, I'm dying to find out. Snappy's the spark, right? He just provided the spark, right? Can we bring that? What are you going to do? I'm curious. Can I ask? What are you going to do?
The muse, let the muse guide. Let the muse guide, and then sing the muse's praises.
Drop the microphone, people. Drop the microphone. That was beautiful.
The muse just gave me something. That we have this tradition of the muse, and we have Orpheus, and his son is Musaeus. The degradation is Moses. Celsus tells us that. So remember, we have the original traditions from the muse, and then we have the degradation. So
you're for purifying the temple,
yes,
or for cleaning that. You're like Callimachus,
bringing back the old ways.
You're Callimachus. You're a modern Callimachus. You're possessed by Callimachus. Look at him to Apollo, and he talks about that. I mean, look at that. Okay, what Neil is exhibiting, right? If he were living in the first century, might be talked about as the possession of a certain. Look, Neil is getting led in a certain direction. There better be evangelicals out there who see this, who say that he's possessed.
Yep.
Yeah, Neil is possessed. How is it leading? How is Neil being led in the right direction? Like, did these mystagogues who enter the person into the function of the mystery, did these mystagogues somehow know that Neil would not be misled because it's a natural process? That all you got to do is, in a sense, push somebody over the cliff into the cave of Trophonius, and they will naturally produce, they'll bring that satanic energy. I love it. Oh my God.
Time for a necromancy of Callimachus.
Right? Time for necromancy in general. Like earlier, Ammon was asking Neil about what brought him out of evangelical Christianity. And I just kept thinking about, well, I had a recent experience. It wasn't similar. It wasn't like an out of evangelical, but it was something to dive me deep into this. And I suggest everyone here do this, and you can all do this at home. Very easy. Go on YouTube, search Lord Byron's Cane. Get yourself the audio book. It's free right there. Then go get yourself some marijuana. Sit down in a really comfy chair. Make sure your back is straight. Light up a bowl and listen to the book. Meditate. And while you're meditating, think about that image of Venus, that bigendered snake goddess. Invoke her. Ask her to show you. You will see. You'll see that image. Lucifer will come and take you around the universe.
And you always, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, think about the Cainites. The Cainites who brought back Esau and the Sodomites and considered the esoteric saving gnosis to be the way. These are the people who laid out this path that we're all on right now. We're just walking on this nice smooth path. It's been laid out before. It's there.
It's usually Bacchic, isn't it? I mean, I can say that now, and you both know exactly what I'm talking about. You get a feel for it because you've walked with that muse, and you've taken those accounts from antiquity, and you've absorbed the imagery, right? It's almost like there's something inherent in nature that allows us to take this track and to see that God must burn. Right? The God and his son and his bride, the son's bride, they must burn. They must come to the point that transition is made. And I would add, Snappy, that if we're going to resurrect Byron, we're going to do it intentionally with Byron because he, as a dragon, and what I'm calling dragons are those originally who preserve the song. That's originally what they are. Those who preserve the song. You can see it. You can do the same thing. You can do the same thing with Petrarch. You can do the same thing with Boccaccio. You can do the same thing with all of these people through time. You can do it with Vlad. I encourage anybody out there, if you're the least bit interested, to look at the poetry of Vlad the Impaler's mercenary poet, Gateway Dragon.
Marulis.
Yeah, they called it the Order of the Dragon. The Order
Yeah.
of the Order of the Dracon. That's what they called
Right.
it.
Yes, yeah. No, yeah, I'm not talking I'm not talking just myth. I'm talking this is actual history,
This
right?
was actual history, right? No,
Yeah.
this is a fact.
We could take the documents produced through time that are initiatory documents. So you don't realize, but these things actually exist. And that's why I keep pushing Otto Kern in his Orphic Fragments, because he's showing us there is a language impressed here that is meant to initiate us. I can sit down with someone who loves Jesus, and if I walk them through the mystery, they are left with the knowledge that their perception of Jesus was wrong. It was an error, a fragment of history, and they have no reality to stand on. And if then they can either die or they can take that extra step there of freedom, right? I think that's the thing we're really looking at, is whether or not we could enter. I hope for the sake of Christians everywhere, right, that they will take a step outside of the cage and just turn and look at Jesus. That's why I think it's so important for us to show Jesus for who he is. You know, people are constantly on my case saying, why are you always talking about texts that are from the Bible? And why are you always talking about Jesus? Because if we really show Jesus to people like Jesus is, that's that blasphemy of the Antichrist, right? Jesus was performing fellatio on a child. Jesus was performing a fellatio on a child when he was arrested. And it's all part of a rite. It's all part of a mystery rite. And if he'd have finished, he
happens when you believe in the Messiah.
died.
That's what happens when you believe in the Messiah. You get a Jesus. Now check this out, though. Talking about Jesus, the Canaanites declared, Origin says they completely abandoned him, right? Their interpretation of the Old Testament was that Yahweh was not merely inferior, but he was completely evil, right? And they decided that they were going to reject the figures of the patriarchs and instead revere Cain, Esau, the Sodomites, who were all considered to be bearers of esoteric saving gnosis. And the Canaanites also honored Eve and Judas. Now, this is where it gets crazy. They're also sometimes considered routine Gnostics for believing that true perfection comes from breaking all the laws of the Old Testament. The violation of biblical perspectives was therefore a religious duty. Because it was difficult to violate all biblical laws during a single lifetime, the Canaanites did not look for salvation in the created world, but escape from it. Subversion. See what I'm saying? There was a duty to reject this degradation that Kelsis late talks about.
Right? And it's great that you bring that up, because what are we doing as Satanists?
The way
right?
of Cain.
Not just that, but we are becoming the antagonist. We are flipping the poles. We are embracing what they hate, and we're showing them that it's not evil.
Yeah.
You know,
The whole
we're
point.
showing them what they're afraid of is a lie, right? It's a lie.
Why do you guys think that guy who wrote that, Origin, why do you think he cut off his own testicles?
Because he was doing the gully rites. He was trying to connect with Aphrodite.
He was a Muslim. He was submitting. He was a Muslim before Islam. If Islam was around in his time, Origin would be a Muslim. Just saying.
That's the most, yeah. I'm thinking about it. If Origin were around later, he would have been a Muslim.
Yeah, no doubt.
I think you're capturing the cage. Wow. I think, oh, I'm blown away. Hang on, I'm blown away. Because then you were saying earlier, Neil, that 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 ability to free oneself then is the exercise. That's really why you're following that horned Zeus, is to find that freedom, that ecstatic freedom. Is there something in people, like, is there something in Origin that is he the one who's Snappy's, zoo animal that prefers to be in the cage? I mean, is that what's going on?
Yeah.
I definitely think so. You see this with a lot of these kind of Christian philosophers. Like the one that always comes to my mind is someone like Saint Anselm, who just kind of denies all reason, where he's like, if you can imagine a being that is infinite and great and in control of everything, then therefore that must be true, just because you can conceive of it. And this is the kind of mental gymnastics these people put themselves through.
It's
They
also
create the image for themselves that imprisons them.
It's also a selfish act, because you're looking for an escape of your, I'm just gonna say it, shitty self, and say this God is gonna kill everybody because I don't like the world, so this God's gonna do it for me, and I'm gonna be one of his minions. That's a really messed up way to see the world.
It's also an extreme blasphemy.
You're waiting for it to happen and saying, "Come on, Messiah, come do it for me." That's what you're waiting for. That's messed up.
Beyond
I
messed
can't
up.
get with that.
How do you do that? How do you do that, Neil? You have a way of bringing it, making it like you should produce plays or something. You bring the exact image. I love that.
Because that's what it is, man. If you hate the world, you're going to really like Christianity.
Exactly. Right? They hate and deny the world. And this is the thing, like, what blows my mind is, like, we've just been talking about all this time, about all these pagan practices who are about life, nature, images. What did the Christians want us to do? Right? What does Origin do? He cuts his balls off, he sits in the dark, and he stares at the wall thinking about nothing. like that's his idea of a perfected life. Like, what the fuck, man?
It's anti-life.
I want to know. Okay, so we can deprogram, or we can give people the access to come out, right? To come out of the religion, to be released from that. We can give them the ability to go further and to be born again, so that they see that reality and they know that reason is their guide, right? You know that reason is your guide. This is a natural process, and there's nothing artificial about it. Now, my question is, okay, we can do all of that naturally, but can we take the next step that the Magi take? And they say now, okay, well, that's the natural makeup of the universe. That's how it all works. The cosmos, the organization around us. That's what they call it, the organization. Cosmos is not a people. Don't let those New Testament knuckleheads tell you that. Cosmos is that organization. It starts with the way a woman organizes her toiletry, right? So can we bring, what's the next step? Can we stand up now and bring that, that manipulation? Can we bring that harnessing of that power? The Christians would say that's the satanic. Now you're getting into the black magic. Yes, exactly. Can we do that using the images that we have? Can we induce these happenings, these coming to life things in society? Can we, I'm not just saying by talking about these things, I'm saying, is there a way to influence what's going on around you? Like, is there black magic that we can perform to take that extra step that the Magi are? They're not satisfied with explaining it. To them, the mystery is a natural operation, right? It's a natural operation. Their concern is now taking those laws of the universe and now binding those laws.
The Byzantine writers were saying that over in Persia, there was magi performing black magic rituals to take down the Roman Empire through the worship of Satan. I'll send it to you. There's Byzantine writers in I think it's like 5th century, Justinian, maybe time of Justinian, maybe before that, Heraclius, maybe Heraclea, whatever. One of those 5th century before Islam. I know it's before Islam because this was when the Magi were running the East. But this guy writes in his histories or his text that there is Magi performing rites and asking Satan to take down Rome. And I'm just reading this shit like this is that's us, dude. That's me and Amon over there in Persia, fucking lighting up the incense and yeah.
That's doing something, man. We're not just starting a cult where we're going to sit around and have a faith and dogma and BS like that, right? We've seen that new world, and we want to manipulate that. We want to pull those strings. We want that activity that those Magi are embracing. We want that to happen. And if you have any question about whether the Magi can drive history, dude, remember it was them who came to that little kid and they were like, oh, you're going to be the king you're going to have the kingdom of heaven, right? They gave him a kingdom. And boom, you and I are sitting here, and you can't throw a rock outside your house without hitting something that has influenced or been influenced by Christianity. You can't.
They know about that.
So are they really controlling it? Yeah, I think they are, man. I want to be one of those Magi, dude. I don't want to be one of the people in the pews, saying, yay, when I'm dead, I'm not gonna have any suffering, right? Yay. No, dude, I want to be those guys who are walking around in a cloud of incense, saying this is the gods that you can't see, the one that's standing right next to you, and then they start talking in that God's language, and you're like, oh, right? Those are the guys that I want to hang around.
Hell yeah.
Right? No, that's exactly. We want to bring back, we got to figure out, how do we get people to listen and get people to see, right? We're always talking about having the ears to hear or having the eyes to see. How do we expose people to this and convince them to open up and see what's there? Like, it's clear to me, when you understand the Orphic Vox, that there are people across history. Sometimes they're not even fully aware. They just have this deep connection to the muse, and they just produce these mysteries naturally. It comes out of history. It's something that everyone can connect to. How do we get people to connect there?
And once we do, what do we do about Neil's army? About Neil's battle. Neil told me, he said, we're at war. And I was shocked that I was like, he's right? He's right. I see what perspective he's bringing in here. And I was like, wow, it's really impressive that he can see that world around him, right? And because Paul's going around saying the same thing, right? Why is Paul doing it? Obviously, Neil and Paul are seeing something on the same level. And I know Neil is not an evangelist, right? I know that he's not coming through that tradition, but somehow he's receiving the same imagery, right? He's not just reading it from a book and saying, this is reality. No, he's allowing everything to coalesce and then telling me, hey, we're in this war. And it profoundly affected me, Neil, when you did that. It profoundly affected me. If we are in this war and in this conflict, right, what are we going to do? We're going to sit on our backsides, right? Or are we going to push? How do we fight? Can we put these images into people's heads, right? Can we perform these activities that somehow engage our brain at a quantum level that we don't understand or can explain? Shouldn't we be doing this? Shouldn't I be entering a state where I can descend upon the enemies in this war, and I can give them those images? I can cast those images, right? Everybody says, oh, the devil is in the wilderness. Yes, he's in the eremon. Notice that even Jesus, when he goes to the eremon, when Jesus goes to the eremon, he can't avoid the devil. The devil is there, almost like it's the physics of what's going on around them. And people are like, well, what does this have to do with Jesus? Jesus spends all of his time walking around casting out demons of the people who are in direct conflict with those daimones. And we like to explain it and say, oh, these are all schizophrenics, right? And this is a history of schizophrenia and how to, no. This is part of a bigger framework of a science that we just don't appreciate and we don't understand. And Christians don't understand. Jesus was right in the middle of it. Yeah.
No, and this is wild too, because there are elements of this that survive in Christianity, right? Like one thing, like I'm really interested in occult practice. And if you look at the Renaissance, all these people are Christian. Bruno's Christian, you know, like they're coming at it from a hermetic perspective, but they're still within the Christian worldview, yet they're producing these images. Boccaccio is a Christian, Petrarch is a Christian, yet they still have this respect for the goddess and they're able to get to her. Like I just was reading Famous Women after you recommended it to me. And on the surface, it's so not pro-woman at all, right? But if you read it from that left-hand way, it's all of a sudden it's inverted. And this is how these people were able to talk about like the goddess and about Satan in the Middle Ages or in the Renaissance. Oh, you're muted, Ammon.
And you know Boccaccio is doing it on purpose because he says that if you cut and paste, he says if you excise and join together, you'll see the original work. And you're like, what? Wait a minute. And so if you go through that and you do that, I've tried to do that, right? Petrarch is sitting there with his red book actually summoning by means of the sortes. He's actually doing it. Boccaccio has made some kind of special work which fits the Renaissance, right? I mean, doesn't this just sound like exactly what, you know, the intellectuals are doing, the artists are doing? He's creating a work where you can join halves together and have a complete history of what is the real pagan heart, the beating pagan heart. There's a reason Michelangelo's Moses has horns, right? Everybody says, oh, it's because the halo, and it's a making of words. Bullshit. Oh, I'm sorry, we're live. Bull.
Right. Or like
Yeah.
you look at I always think about the Mona Lisa. When you understand the image, what is her smile? Like people are debating about it, and I'm just sitting here laughing. That's the smile of the core. They lay this out for you plainly, and even he kind of lays it out for you, Da Vinci. It's ridiculous.
What and at what point do you stand back and say, okay, everybody's interested in the esoteric meanings behind all of this art and whatnot, but when you get down to the symbols that they're actually using, and you realize, oh man, this matches up with the classical world, and of course, this is a neoclassical movement in the Renaissance, and you suddenly realize, oh my God, they are drawing on those ancient, what we look down on now as demonic and devilish. They're actually using that as a pool to catapult themselves forward intellectually into a place. Yep. If we want a Renaissance, the question is not more technology and faster computers, right? That's all well and good, right? We need those faster computers. We need that quantum computing. But that's not what brings Renaissance. What brings Renaissance is a return to that classical pool. That's what brought us the Renaissance and those images that are in it. It's not just because they were Greeks and Romans, not just because they were pre-Christian. It's just something inherent, that power that's in those images that they recognize, just like the Egyptians did. I mean, look at the Egyptians, dude. We're still trying to figure out how they built the pyramids. Right?
I mean, you know, and it's amazing. But this is the thing. Like people forget just how much, like, the ancients are not dumb. They're just as smart as we are, right? They just don't have the same technology. But even that is kind of obscured because so much of this technology is obscured, right? Like you just brought up, we don't know how the Egyptians built the pyramids. Why is that? Because they hid it within their mystery cults, and they didn't tell anyone, and like they're all kind of doing this kind of thing. Like there's this language that you can see when you learn to understand images. And this is key too, because we're dealing largely, like most of humanity is illiterate, but they understand images. So when you invoke these images, that's how that's the real symbolism. That's what people are really investing into. So like you're talking about the Renaissance and looking at the art. If you know what to look for, it's everywhere. Like look at the clothes, these people. Why are they all dressed in purple, red, and white? It's all of those are dyes that are hallucinogenic dyes. The red dye is a MAOI. The purple dye is DMT. There you go. The white is your antidote. Like it's clear as day.
Yep.
Do you guys feel? I mean, did Neil and Snappy? Do you guys feel like you're kind of Renaissance scholars / artists? Do you feel like you're, even if you compare yourself to Bruno, do you feel like you're in this role where you have to be the accuser? We're in a system where you have to accuse in order to destroy, to bring back that which is the pure, the beautiful. Do you feel like you're in that, or where? I mean, let me just ask this. Do you guys feel some kinship with these people in the Renaissance and these classical Greeks and Romans and Egyptians?
Yeah. Even all the way up to the German philologists who brought us Alice. They were tapped into that same energy. They were tapped into that same source.
Yeah, 100%. I feel like what we're doing now, and even just engaging on here, right? We're talking about this. We're creating new images. We're invoking these images. We're bringing them forth for everyone who's watching here, right? We're trying to awaken people, right? We're playing in that same field that these Renaissance artists were, and the more we engage, the more you will produce and be It's how this works, right? The mystery turns you into an artist. It turns you into a performer. That's the whole point of it. Why does it come out of the theater?
That's gorgeous. I'm gonna quote that someday. The mystery turns you into an artist. Neil, what are we gonna do with your connection to all that? You've brought in all these great scholars, and someday are you gonna sit down and say, this is how important, this is why this connection is important? Like, what are you going to bring all of your understanding, right? You got to be understanding something. You're unique, right? Like it's just would be like somebody at a university who's got access to 40 different professors and interviews them. What are you getting from all of this? Like, where is it going?
I'm piecing together the truth. That Parmenides had this goddess he called truth. He put it up as the highest form of something that needs to be worshipped, truth. So I'm putting together little pieces by pieces from every source that I can get. Every time I speak to someone, not even just PhDs, just people who have something to bring to the table that I can take something from and put together. This is the truth.
Snappy, what do we do? What direction? What direction do we go?
We go in the direction of creation, right? Of artistic play, right? This is the thing. And transformation. We try to do it new and different than the others did it, and we try to make it our own. That's how we approach it.
But I like how you brought it back to the theater, because that's the one who possesses is Bacchus. He's the one who possesses. Talk about being possessed by the devil. Hell yeah. I got that mania. Hell yeah. That mania is running through me. Feel that Bacchic revelry. Like us three are out in the middle of India on the mountains, and we find some ivy growing on the side of the hill. We rip them off and put them in the little crowns, Stephanos wreaths, and throw them on our heads and start jamming out. That's that Bacchic revelry. That's what we're doing. We're doing that right now.
You're going to scare the Christians, Neil. You're going to scare the Christians with that talk because they know the power that has. They respect that power. They know it. Should we just start going to churches? We should just start going to churches and unconverting people. Do you think we would last long if we did that?
Oh, fuck no. Like, there's no way we would survive. No, these people are crazy. Like, this is something I also want to talk about, right? Like, we're seeing right now the...
Let me ask you this before you jump into the next subject. What do you think would be quicker death? To try this in Crown Heights or to try this in the Bible Belt? Which one would be which one would you last longer doing?
You'd last longer in Crown Heights because they're used to weirdos. They got homeless people around and stuff, and they in the Bible Belt they even expunge those people. It's only their pristine picket fences.
Yeah, that's a clear one. You're right. All right, go ahead.
It's too, and also, could you, Neil? Could you bring on, and Snappy too? Could you bring on some of these evangelicals? Yeah, I know that, Neil, you've had debate with evangelicals, and they always reduce it to the place that they can wrestle. If we take it off the map with them, and if you start talking about things that they're not going to have exposure to, right away you can cut through. I'm wondering, you reach out to those scholars, and I have tremendous respect for you for doing that. You reach out to those scholars. Could you reach out to to a leader of the church to come on with you?
Oh, I've been trying.
To take it.
Actually, my assistant, someone who has been helping me out a little bit, is getting me hooked up with a big time Muslim YouTuber that I can go head to head with and battle in the arena with. That's what I need to do more of those, don't I?
It makes you wonder if, you're probably some Byzantine monk reborn, right? And you need to, it makes me think, I wonder if that's like your arena where you can have so much power with these scholars. You can draw on it as you're composing that truth. But can you then take that out to the enemy, right? And free that person? Could you develop a way so that people are like, hey, don't go on Gnostic Informant because he'll convert you, right? He'll bring you out. Not just a debate. They have all these debates that are masturbatory, and they sit around. They get 300,000 views, right? In these debates, and Hitchens is this and Hitch bull, because you pull it out of that arrogant, stupid self-display and bring it into a place where you simply cut down somebody's foundation completely and start over, right? We just start over. I don't know. Is it just me? Maybe I'm just fantasizing.
You could with the right person, but it would have to be a person who's already open, I think. But those debates, though, it's not about the people you engage with, Neil. It's about the people in the comments. I watched several of those that you've done. And people are moved by when you push these people. They see that these guys are straw men.
Yeah, it's not about trying to convert the guy I'm debating. It's about someone who's on the fence that watches me debate this person. That's all that matters. I know the person's not going to convert. I just want to give them, let them walk into my chat, so let them hear them say stupid shit like, oh yeah, that's not. Oh yeah, Deuteronomy's not letting people rape people. Oh no, of course not. No, let's read the text. Oh yeah, it doesn't say it that way. I'll just let them do it. You know what I mean? It's that easy. Just all you gotta do is read the Bible. All you gotta do, especially the Old Testament, just read it. It doesn't take long.
Soon they'll have to justify rape, right? And they'll have to justify murder and genocide.
People on the fence, because the people on the fence aren't going that deep. They're just reading. They read a little bit of Genesis. They might read a couple passages in some other book, that all the cool stuff, all the cool stories, but they're not reading all the laws and all. But once they start seeing that, oh, what is it? Whoa, I'm out of here. Quick, boom, done. It's that easy. That was
How
awesome.
many how many shekels do you have to pay for the girl that you rape? I don't remember.
It's something crazy.
But
It's,
honestly, when you're asking those questions, Amon, I just kept thinking, I honestly believe the most important thing we can do to convert people is to be ourselves and to embrace the transformation that the magic brings, right? To follow the muse, and the muse will turn you into something important that people will be inspired by and want to be. Like, already just engaging with the muse, I'm more in touch with myself than I've ever been in my entire life, you know?
Isn't it amazing, that thing that built classical civilization? You don't think about it, and you're like, Homer starts off, "Tell me, O muse," and you have all of this muse here and muse there, and you're like, what? Nobody really ever explains it to you until you see her operating, and you realize, like Neil said as well, you're inspired, right? At that moment, you're inspired. You feel that cosmic working, and it clicks, and you get that like profound fear. At least I do. I get that profound fear and respect as soon as I say. And I had that one, for example, I was using the sortes, right? And I'm talking now about magic that you actually do, right? I was using that sortes, and I asked the muse, "What's going to happen today?" And she described exactly pulling a man's beard out, which I did that day. And at the moment that I pulled his beard out, the statement that was made in the sortes about "you will pull a man's beard out" cemented itself in my brain in such a fearful way that I realized, oh, that's that Pan, right? That's that force of Pan. My students would tell me, what is that force that compels, right? What is that? You seem to have a way of compelling. And just like Dionysus in the Bacchae, they have to know that this is just universal physics, right? It's not, it's a manipulation of the cosmos around you, right? So people always ask, they're like, what can we do? Those who have come through and they see the concrete reality of the mystery, and they kind of see how maybe it works in certain ways, and they're entering that Renaissance state, they're approaching to what Petrarch is doing mentally. Yeah, how do we get to the place where we're now affecting our surroundings, right? Where we're now, according to the physics, you should never live a day of your life without knowing the future, right? We should have complete and total access to that if we are performing the mystery. Imagine, I'll say it this way. You've got the Jews going into the tent, right? In their trek, they're going into the tent and they're receiving that logos, right? They're receiving it. We should be able to do the same. We should be able to tell. If you have anybody, like if somebody tells you, I'm an oracle, and we have these, there are people out there, and probably know who I'm talking about, who are bragging about the fact that they're bringing that oracular power back. They should, if they're able to do that, if they're able to revive Pan, they should be able to know exactly what's going on in the future, to the point that when you ask them, they know you better than you know yourself. And I don't think we've reconstructed that oracle. I don't think that oracle is here functioning. Neil was talking about when it died. Sorry, go ahead.
I don't know how I read your mind. That was so weird. I knew you were going to say that, because at the end of Delphi, they started getting really like scary oracles that were like, "What? I don't know. This is going to be good." And then finally, it was like, "This is it. Pan is dead. Apollo's gone. I'm leaving. The rites are all corrupted. The Sibylline books are taken over. The gods are gone. We have left. Like, goodbye." Those were like the last 5 oracles they got were like messages that were like, "Bye." And that was it. The great god Pan is dead. That was one of them. You know what I mean? Like, they're getting messages like, "Oh, this biblical religion's taking over now. We're gone. Bye." good luck for the next 1500 years living as slaves to this, you know what I mean, like living fake lives and pretending to be someone that you're not, and living like that's what happened, dark ages,
That's the invisible history that is there. That's the kind of thing that the Magi follow. Those dragons, they follow that. And they constantly fight to preserve that access, that road back. That's gorgeous. Could we resurrect these daimones? There's got to be a way.
we need to
You know what I
resurrect
mean?
Pan. It's Pan, they all.
Yeah.
That's the one.
We got to bring him back. You know what I mean? There's got to be a concrete way, not with faith, not with cult.
No.
But there's got to be a concrete way to bring those forces so they're operating again.
Do we build the temple?
I think, yeah. I mean, you can build a temple. That's one thing. But I think we need to know what the drugs were. We need to recreate the drugs that they had. It's very clear that we are not doing or using what they had because we don't have the snake venoms. We don't have any people who are drug production machines.
And what's his name got really close, Ruck. But even Ruck will tell you he's missing one thing. He's missing something. Remember, Ruck told me that. He said there's something.
Yeah, he tried it, didn't he? Didn't a bunch of them try the Kekion and it didn't work?
Follow the recipe, but something was not there. So I don't know. Maybe it's some root that they're, because they're talking about root cutters, and I asked him about that. Was there any roots involved? And I think he said something like, I don't know, I'm not sure, but like maybe that's what they're missing. Maybe it's got to be the roots.
That's why I think we need that Nero text. Maybe that Nero text will show us. Maybe it'll be a good guidepost. I swear, we need access, guys, to a quantum computer that can take everything from this formula and can break down the chemistry of what's going on in the human body. I think that, I don't know, Snappy, I don't know. Snappy, please tell me if I'm hallucinating and crazy.
You're not crazy. You're not hallucinating. Like we're on the cusp of something here, right? Like there's a whole psychedelic renaissance, right? I just keep thinking about, like you were telling me about Ruck, right? 50 years ago, he almost lost his job. He was a laughingstock in his field. Now Harvard puts him on a pedestal and they show him off as like one of the most important scholars of his time. The whole thing is flipped, Everything is curtained. We're finally throwing off these shackles and we're seeing this information come forth. What makes me nervous, though, is that always when you have these great revelatory moments, the polar opposite comes to try and smash it down, right? We're seeing this psychedelic revolution. We're seeing the acceptance of all of these different identities. We're seeing the embrace of femininity in a way we haven't in hundreds and hundreds of years. And now society's freaking the fuck out about it.
Yep.
It's an honor to work with you guys. It's an honor to work with you both. I have tremendous respect for you both. And for people out there, anybody who wants to question my respect and my relationship with a Gnostic informant, let me tell you one thing. Honesty. You know somebody when you wrestle them. When you're fighting with somebody. Neil was sitting in, I think it's Buffalo, and he was sitting there in the middle of a snowstorm, and he calls me up, and I had just been talking to the devil, and he said, Neil's going to get in touch with you, and you need to read his sign, right? And I was like, whatever, devil says stuff all the time, right? But it happens. I follow it because it always comes out the way exactly as he says it. Neil and I talked, and Neil remembers this. He said, oh my God, there was a giant flash of lightning in the middle of this storm. What is it? What does it mean? And I went, oh crap. Here's the cue that I was supposed to get. And I ran and got my Etruscan, my John Littis, who's talking about the signs that the lightning reveals. And you can go to the date, right? This sign appears and you can call up in the Etruscan, right? I'm using the old rite. And it portended war. Long story short, I told him, I said, it's war, Neil. It's war. And it was from that point that we entered into that combat. And it was through that combat when that I came to learn who Neil is and to respect it. And that honesty, you can't buy that. You can't purchase it, right? It's a genuine character. So I'm glad the conflict that Neil and I entered into showed me who he is, and it showed me who I am too. So I was a little bit humbled by it all. So I'm proud, guys, to serve with you both, and I hope we can bring back the devil, and I think we need to. The Navy has the military. My brother was a Marine, and his job was to call in naval gunfire, right? And they would always, he explained to me how they do it. And we can perform our magic on the same level. You fire for effect once you've zeroed in on a target, right? It's the same thing the magicians are doing. So, I mean, there's, I love working with you guys. I just can't. That's all I want to say. I just love working with you guys.
Likewise.
Right.
Likewise.
And I just want to say, as an outsider who witnessed some of that, I didn't, but it showed me again, like, Ammon talk a lot about money, but then all of a sudden he's rejecting it and he's standing by his principles. And then you guys came to amends and were okay and moved past it. Like, this was a huge thing. It showed, you guys are both honest actors who mean what you say and do what you claim, right? Like, that's important.
That's why when people criticize, I was even doing it. I was like, Neil, why are you talking to Giorgiani, Neil? He thinks that the moon is a star base, right? I mean, come on, bro. Right? Why are you talking to him? I was like, kick that guy off. And his Greek is shit. Giorgiani, your Greek is shit. Okay. So I was like, kick him off. And then I realized, I was thinking about it. And I thought, you know what? Kudos to Neil for having the guts, because everybody tells Neil don't have him on, right? And he has the guts to do it. He's not afraid. He is in that frame of awake and unafraid. When Neil and I first started our engagement, our battle, somebody asked me, I said, he will be brought like Dionysus, like brings Pentheus. He will be brought to the place that he sees it. Why? Because that's what the muse told me. And he did. He saw that moment. He entered into that moment and he came through it like a child of Heracles. And watching him do it, I was like, oh, damn, you have to respect this. And so when he invites somebody like Giorgiani on, there's a courage there that I have to say, look, shut up with your suggestions and about who he has on and not, because he's following that muse. And I gotta say, I respect that, Neil. I respect it.
Well said. It's because it couldn't. That's it. And I bring people on. I mostly disagree with most of the stuff everyone says, but I'm taking something. That's just the reality of it. I'm not gonna. I can't. I would have zero guests if I found everyone if I just tried to find people that I agree with on everything. I would have zero guests because there's always disagreement. But so I look for people who have certain things they want to say, and I bring them on, and we have our conversations, and then I go on to the next person, and I take what I can from what we agree on, and just discard the rest.
And it's also important that someone like a Giorgiani, they're talking about a lot of the stuff that we're engaged in. And they're trying to present a certain narrative, and they're even explicit about their narrative. Like, it's clear they got some weird, shady money. It's clear they're involved, or at least were involved in shady politics. But like, the guy does say some really interesting stuff. He makes some really interesting points, even points that I find myself agreeing with. But the key is to recognize. We want to understand where these people are coming from and how they twist things.
You know what it's like? It's like in World War II, where you don't want to be friends with the Russians, but you do it just because Nazis are worse. Right. That's what Giorgiani's like the Russians. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, kind of all right. We'll figure it out later. But right now we have this common enemy we got to deal with first.
But also, just the discussions bring up all this interesting stuff. Like I was thinking about how Giorgiani was talking in your lectures all about how Plato and his noble lie is the worst thing ever, and it's like I disagree with him, and I disagree with how he shits all over Plato. But there is a truth to that. There is this. The Christians and and other Abrahamic peoples did take that idea and exploit it. That's not what Plato was doing. I don't think Plato is some cartoon character like Giorgiani makes him out to be. But there is something there that's at play that he's able to highlight for us, and I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I mean, Plato had criticized Homer to the point where you're almost like, is he anti-Homer? Maybe he wasn't anti-Homer, but like. He was pretty harsh about Homer, and Homer is Homer. That's the oracle. That's the muse right there. We gotta put Homer up. I'm not putting Homer down. I'm putting Homer up. So so I see what he's saying there. Yeah.
Well, keep doing it. Keep doing it, Neil. Don't let. I've sent you messages in the past, pissed off, like, oh, I can't watch anymore. Georgia, I stayed up one night until about 3 a.m, just going over his bullshit. And to try to tell you I was going to have it, I was going to, no. I didn't realize I was working the wrong way, that you were out there in the front and you were out there working it. You're crafty. See that this shows that you're more crafty than I am. You're more clever in a good way, not in a negative way.
But he's following his daemon. And we might be on the opposite side of, like, the Trojan War is going on and they're on the other side, but like, you got to give it to him. At least he's following his daemon. He's not double speaking, trying to talk to both sides. Like, here's the answer you want to hear. Here's the answer you want to hear. Here's the answer you want to hear. No, he's following that one daemon, which I respect.
Right? And he does bring up interesting things. Like another thing from your lecture I took away was when he was talking about the connection between Greece and Persia. And it's clear when you look at like Artemis. Right. And it's clear when you look at like Heraclitus and all, like those are real things that he brought up. He makes interesting points. It's just his conclusions I disagree with, right? Where he takes them, and
he's missing that Pelagian route. He's missing that
exactly. He keeps wanting to make it all about Iran, and it's like you're not going back far enough. You're not, and
you're right.
It's frustrating.
That's what it is.
So is that just a more appropriation? It's just trying to claim, it's a corruption of that original.
It's another degradation, just like you have with the Septuagint religion, and they're trying to corrupt the rites. The Iranians doing the same thing. It's just Persian centric instead of Israel centric. It's just the same. It's the same type of thing. You know what I mean?
But what's also really cool about your videos, and what I've always found, is like someone like Giorgiani, I was interested in at a certain point. But when you listen to these people speak, they put their foot in their mouth time and time again. They reveal themselves, even a lot of these, like, he's proven himself as a dishonest, awful person, and his ideas are not worth their weight. And you didn't have to say anything to him. It's the same thing with a lot of the Christian scholars you have on. I listen to them and I go, I can clearly see that you have an agenda. Or I can clearly see that you're utilizing this platform for your own ego stroking, even if you're a good scholar. But like,
Oh, Snappy, I'm so glad you said that. Let me ask Neil. Neil, the authorities that you invite, would you say that they have a certain narcissistic tendency, or like what is a scholar? If you had to describe what is your typical scholar, what's their emotional hang up?
This is a common thing that I run into. It's like there's this like mentality where, all right, I went through the training, I got my PhD. Now anyone else that says anything and he brings up any theories or anything, it's like they immediately have to like, well, actually, that meme, actually, or actually, this is really what's going on. It's always that like, and it's overly correcting things that just don't need to be correct. Like, don't get me wrong, there's some shit like mythicism. There's some shit that really needs to be corrected on. But like some of the stuff that people are just saying and they're just bringing up their own theories or looking at a primary source that scholars think isn't right because another primary source disagrees with it. They get overly correcting about certain things, and it just seems like sometimes they get their egos in the way. That's all.
Do you stroke them while you're? I'm sorry, Snappy. Do you stroke them, Neil, while you're? I mean, like, do you find that you can use this against them? Like, here.
Sometimes you got to play it the way you're playing it, just to get the for the news. You know what I mean?
I totally know you're doing that. I watch you do that.
You can tell, yeah. You figured me out, dude. You figured me out.
But yeah, all I wanted to say with you know, with all of these scholars in everything, right, is that, you know, we need to recognize that they may have some information to offer us, right? But like the whole academy and everything, like these people, like they don't know. Like when you really get into religion studies and you really go through academia, these people, what you really start to understand is like they say less than PhDs are like, for example, that interview Ammon and you did with Dr. Angela Puka. I love her written content that she does on her channel. It's great. But when you guys talked, she refused to answer any question. She refused to talk about anything. And she just kept saying, well, that doesn't exist, or we can't equate these things together, and everything has to be in their separate little box, because they don't want to be wrong. They're so afraid of potentially being wrong. They say nothing, and they muddy the waters. And they deny that people are interconnected. It's like,
no. What you just said, though, is it's when people get so far up and they have to hold that, they have to preserve that image of, I'm an expert, I have a PhD. It's like they get to a point where they get afraid of like guessing things or jumping a cliff once in a while, jumping over some. Oh, we don't know what it says here. We lost this piece of the manuscript. What could it say? Well, we can't say for certain. So, well, no. Let's look at the context. Let's throw some what you're saying is sometimes they if they don't know something, instead of just like, how do I say this? Instead of like granting that it could be A, they'll just say, we don't know. Just so nobody can say you're wrong. They're afraid to be wrong. You're right. It's that simple. I should just left it at that. Sometimes scholars can be afraid to be wrong. And they'll just like,
and they muddy the waters.
Not my area.
Muddy the waters. You get like, there's this thing in academia where they purposefully make it so nothing can be said. They don't want to make any definitive statements lest we run the risk of saying anything that might be true or not true. And so then you say fucking nothing. It's ridiculous.
No, I agree. I know exactly what you're getting at. But that's our job. That's the thing, though. That's why I stopped being mad about that, because I get where they're coming from, and I realize it's my job to jump in that and come in and do all that extra shit.
Because you're not a scholar. You're not held to these ridiculous
I'm allowed to be wrong.
things. You can run your mouth.
Neil you can quote the same sources, Neil, and you can bring up stuff. I've watched you do it, and they're a little bit, you can tell sometimes they're a little bit surprised. They're like, oh, you know, look at, he's bringing up his work. And I think that makes, his sources, I think that makes them more comfortable. But at the same time, I think there's a little discomfort, because all of a sudden they're not the end all be all, right? With their Harvard glow. If this guy called Gnostic Informant is able to bring up these sources, you know, and is able to deal with these sources like a scholar, then what are you for?
Well, you know what I noticed too is when I start going deep, and I might have a scholar on with me, and it's almost like they were like thinking, if what this guy's saying is bullshit, and I nod my head and co-sign it, they're gonna think that I'm the one saying this. So like a lot of times they'll freeze up and say, "Oh, I never heard that. I'll have to look into that." And that's their way of saying, "I don't have no idea what you just said, but let's change the subject so I don't look stupid." Like sometimes that happens where they're like, I'll get into something and like it might be out of their range limit, which is fine. It's normal. None of us are all knowing, but like I might bring something up that they don't know about, and it's like, oh yeah, interesting. I'll look into that. And like they don't want to co-sign it, because if I'm wrong, then they're wrong. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, I
Totally.
bring them into territories that they don't want to be, and they're like, okay, let's get out of here.
Totally. That's what I was known for as a graduate student. I must have been to 30 different conferences, international and national. And that's what I was known
I can
for.
still see that. I can
That's what, no. People would be like, we'd have a paper that was a 10-minute paper, and then people would ask questions, and typically they'll stand up when they're addressing the panel and they'll ask a question. As soon as people saw me standing up, they're like, oh shit, here it comes. Because I would always take them somewhere where they were uncomfortable. I had a whole battery of text to work with, and you could always throw something in and to get them off balance. And it's terrible, because you should be, as a master of your field, you should not be able to be gotten off balance. But that means you have to be flexible, so that when something comes up that you don't know, you're honest and you say, I don't know if there's any evidence for this. I don't know what it does.
That's true.
That's we see all this projection, though. You know, we constantly see this projection,
like Harvard,
right? Where you see these professors who are taking our modern culture, our modern Christian perceptions, and placing it on the past. Like you were talking to me about your dissertation, Ammon, and they made you remove all the drug references because the founders of Western culture could never have been doing drugs recreationally. It's like, blow it out your rear. You're just denying the reality. You're using your modern lens and your modern preconceptions to misjudge an entire culture, right? It's the same thing when we're talking about sacrifice. And you're looking at, people commit child sacrifice? They're doing it almost everywhere. Get over yourselves. Yes, it's horrific and it's vile, but these are human things that have a human understanding, you know? And so much we want to place our moral reservations upon these people and like, oh, they wouldn't do that because I wouldn't do that. Or, you know, but you need to take that blinder off and try to perceive the world through their eyes, you know?
Yeah.
And a lot of people
Imagine eating a cake. Imagine eating a cake into which an aborted fetus has been baked. Right? Imagine it. Imagine where you have to be culturally, where you're participating in an event where you are consuming the essence, that's what that is, of humanity. You're consuming it. And don't sit around like scholars and say, oh, were they doing this? Were they not? No, we know that they were doing it because they were trying to say it was a thing of the past that they had grown out of. It's a big deal for the Greeks, right? That this is a concrete part of their past. It's a part of, but if you're in that situation where you're with a group that is taking a woman's abortion, that she is chemically induced, and right, we have the formula for the abortions, and they're uterine lining irritants mostly. It just causes the uterus to slough, and that's what they would say, right? If you want this to slough, then you have to use this drug. Well, then you and I consume that. Think about that for a minute. What could possibly be the benefit to us to have a woman abort and then for us to consume? Well, it's whatever is in there. That's the combination of that drug that they gave her, plus whatever cells those are that are that primordial lump that's beginning to develop. There's some goodies in there, and people didn't just sit around and make up stories. Oh, you know what? I think I'll invent this horrific concept, right? Right?
There's also horrific. Right? Yeah. There's also this power that comes with these things, right? Like there's a power that comes from the breaking of taboo. There's a power that comes when you're engaging in destruction, when you're spending waste. Like everyone needs to read and look into George's Bataille, because he explains all of this properly through his idea of this accursed share. In order to experience the all, in order to return to that nostalgic idea of being in the womb, we create a proxy that we destroy. And through that destruction, we're able to enter into that death. We're able to experience that oneness, that liminal space, you know, and you see people engage in this kind of stuff in many different ways. It's human. They do it through BDSM, through intense forms of sexuality. They do it through body destruction, Why do you think these religious people are starving themselves, denying themselves anything, mutilating their bodies? Because it produces these effects that allow you to transcend. You know, it's like we're doing it today in different contexts. You don't think like BDSM has gone nowhere. These religious extremists, you go to India, you'll see them eating dead bodies. I've seen it. You'll see them cutting their cocks off. This fucking happens. People are still doing the same stuff. You know, it's just in different contexts and it's removed from our purview.
Well said.
Wow.
You know, like this is all human, right? Sacrifice, taboo breaking, sex, even like restriction. Like people don't understand like sexuality and religion are two sides of the same coin. They produce the same, like in the Greek, they tell it that orgasmos, right? That state, that moment where you can experience the ion, right? You can do it through the violence and the sex, or you can do it through the restraint. But either way, it's that same feeling.
In Babylon, that's what the temple of Ishtar, Venus. That's what was going on. They had the sacred prostitutes there, and that was the bring that in. It was to go and get that Bacchus spirit going in you, bring you back to life. You need that. It's not just going there and going, oh, no. It's going there and
it's about breaking you down to a point where you are willing to die, right? Because to experience the one, you have to die, even a partial death, right? None of us want to die. We don't want to we don't want to lose our sense of self, but you cannot experience the one without losing your sense of self. And this is what they're getting at in the Bacchae and in all of these plays, right? Why is it so terrifying to view the right? Because the right destroys you. It destroys the self. But at the same time, it's intoxicating. We can't help but look. We need it. We want to engage in this violence, in this eroticism, in this extremism, because it connects us.
Yeah, what do you want? The drugs, the rock and roll, and the eroticism, or you want right? Can you imagine if they had a group of Bacchants come forward in time and were to watch a religious service? They would be like, "Dude, this blows."
Yeah, well, you know what it is. It's like a corporatized version of what the Orphics were doing, because they know that they have enough to keep you with. There's enough mania there to keep you going back. So, but it's not enough to give you the power to escape. What I mean by that, do you know what? You ever heard of a water organ from the Greeks? It's called the hydraulis or something. You're muted. You're muted, Amma.
You talking about the water clock now?
Yeah, well, it's like a water organ. They played music on it. The Orphics were into this stuff. I was just reading about this. I'll share my screen. You'll see what I'm talking about. It's this right here. See what I'm talking about? Water organ, hydraulis. And so I get the 2nd century musicians. They play these organs, and this comes from the Greeks who invented this. Like, this goes back to the 3rd century BCE. So this is ancient. Like, this was like an ancient technology that the Orphics were using to produce music, and that's why you have
incredible.
Yeah, and but that's what I'm saying. The Christians take this and bring it into their churches, and that's why you get these organ churches. That's that's an idea that the Orphics brought into the picture, because that music gets you into the spirit. See what I'm saying?
I wonder if that thing is mobile at all. Because now I'm thinking,
Yeah, it is mobile.
So 3rd century. So they're still operating within that procession. So it's a mobile, fantastic. It's a mobile device. Fantastic.
They knew what they were doing. These were brilliant geniuses that gave us a lot of things that we take for granted. They really do.
We got to remember that these guys are building upon hundreds of, like, human history is a lot longer than we think, especially prehistory, right? They're probably practicing rites and ideas that came with us out of Africa. You know, when you look at one thing that blew my mind when you get into the anthropology, where do you find the original Venus figures in Africa? How old are they? Like, we're talking 500,000 years old. Some of these things, they predate humans, you know.
There are, yeah, those idols of Venus that you find them all over the world. They look very similar too.
The goddess literally predates us. Think about that, guys.
That's a good way to, yeah. That's gorgeous. That's gorgeous. The knowledge is out there, and if we're not arrogant, like the hydraulics there, had I ever seen that in a text? No. In all my time of working with Orphic texts and fragments, I've never seen a reference to that. Am I bold enough to admit that I've never seen it? Yeah. Are there things that I don't know? There's a shit ton. The more I read,
you know what's going to happen? You know what's going to happen is you're going to go back to a text that you've been reading for 20 years, and then the word's going to show up in there. You're going to say, "Oh fuck, I've always known about this." It happens to me all the time.
Yeah, yeah. But the fact that we can do that, because the more you study, the more you realize that you don't know. You're not getting. Your picture is small compared to what it really is. That's what you can't get across to the Christians. I've worked in seminaries. You cannot get that across to them. You don't know everything about this text. There's elements. You know, people ask me, what about this in Mark? I don't know. I don't know what it's doing there. I can tell you where I've seen it encountered in other texts, but I can't tell you what it means. I swear, guys, we have to make a pact. We have to make a pact that we will not try to maintain that ground that the academics do. They try to hold it and keep it, and then like, oh no, anything else can't be added to it. No, we can't do that. We have to say, what is our evidence showing us? And if I don't know, look at that. I've been talking about Orphics for the last year with people, right? And I didn't know they use a water-based pipe. I have no idea. That's fantastic. But we can take that knowledge and we can incorporate it. You know what I mean? And isn't that what we're supposed to do in the museum? That's why Neil is clearly Callimachus, like revivified, right? Isn't that what we're supposed to do? Yes, we're supposed to be at that place that we can say, look, there's this and there's this source and that source and that source, instead of coming up with a friggin' dogma and saying everybody has to do this, right? I'm going to be honest with you guys. That's just the way, excuse me. Why aren't people like that? You know, it's disgusting. Why do you have to have this facade of, I'm an evangelical, like that guy that you had on, Neil, that was you were debating him and he was like a Christian apologist. The arrogance, the all-knowing arrogance on that guy. As soon as I listened to his first talking with you, I was like, okay, this guy hasn't been purged of that arrogant daimon, right? He's like, he reminds me of people that I worked with at university. And you can't get through to those people. You can't, you know, because if they know everything, there's no way that you're going to, like, it's futile. Like, I mean, seriously, do you think this guy is ever going to change his opinion? No, he can't, because he has a scaffolding that he's built the world on. And if it's not right, he's in trouble.
The key to this is that they've set up their entire worldview where everything is a test, and that they have to overcome the test in order to get into heaven. So they can't. You can throw things that are wrong in as much as you want. Like, I was in that mindset. Being wrong just emboldens you, because everything is out to get you. Everything is against us in the community, right? What ends up having to happen with these people is they have to get hurt. They have to perceive the community for what it truly is, for the lie that it is, you know?
Yeah. It says that the guy who invented the water clock is the same guy who invented the water organ, Catespios.
Oh, wow.
And then it says right here, predecessor.
Good, because I had seen his water clock.
Yeah,
right? They're using that. I mean, it's
same technology. So you're exactly right. It's the same person who invented it.
So is it an instrument, Neil, that makes, like, is it flutes then? Somehow, does it sound like a flute or something? They got pipes,
I guess,
or something.
Oh, I did see a text that said that the the Talmud banned it and said it was evil. Isn't that crazy? Here, it's in. I think it's in the Wikipedia page too. Over here, let me look. Let me see. Oh, here we go. The contest between Apollo and Marsyas, and Apollo and the 9 Muses. The water organ were played out of sight to stimulate the music instruments appearing played by the statues in mythological scenes, as Orpheus playing the viol. Told you, it's the Orphics that brought this to light. The contest. Now check this out. What do the biblical religions say? They say this is the Talmud mentions the instrument is not appropriate for the Jerusalem temple. So they said, no, that's Pan. That's the devil. But for some reason, though, the church said, let's do it. I don't know. Who knows?
And from that, we go, ho! How do you do it? You do it better. Do that again. I want to make a video. Where we use that. I want you to do that for me. And I'm going to include it on Satanic Initiation. I'm going to include it. I don't know how. It sounds perfect. Monty Python-esque. I love it.
But yeah, guys, we're coming up to almost 2 hours and 45 minutes here. I love chatting with you, but I think we probably all have lives to get to. And, but yeah, do either of you want to comment just to bring things back to Satan, to have any kind of, or in Lucifer, any final comments on that?
Yeah, just if you're trying to understand what we're getting at, just realize that the devil that the Christians created is the power that all the gods under the Saturnian cosmology. So Bacchus, the Bacchus who Bacchus is the one who possesses you. Pan is the image. Venus is the spirit. Diana is the Lightbringer. Venus, Diana. Apollo, also Lightbringer. Prometheus, the fallen. Hades, king of the underworld. All these attributes are the devil, are Satan. So Satanism is paganism incarnate. It's the rejection of the biblical religions. Period.
I couldn't say that better. I'm in total agreement, Neil. And I can't wait for your video to come out. I want to the one that you did with the explaining the basics of Roman religion, that kind of thing need that.
It's the same style video as that, and it's got to be ready by tomorrow. So tomorrow, it might be like tomorrow afternoon, evening-ish, but it's going to be ready by tomorrow, guaranteed.
But yeah, everyone, make sure you go check out Neil's new video that's coming out. And also, Neil and Ammon just did a stream just the other day on Mark 15 and the mystery of the naked boy. Honestly, the best interview that they ever did together. Everyone should take a couple hours and go watch it. It is inspiring shit.
Still getting views every hour. Still. It just keeps going.
There was some kind of demonic thing. There was some kind of demonic thing going on because thoughts that were going back between me and Neil were like transmitted. I don't know how it happened, but he would say he would bring like the perfect buttressing evidence up. Just like, oh, yeah, here. He was just resurrecting ghosts. When he raised up the dude from Abdera, he resurrected an old dude from Abdera, and I was like, God damn, that's a trick. So it was inspired for me, and it was humbling for me, Neil, to be in those circumstances. So thank you.
Yeah, and the same thing kept happening to me. I kept bringing stuff up, and you would dropping it was a complimentary thing.
Yeah,
that's what it was.
Yeah. It was amazing to be on the sideline and witness that. But yeah, thank you everyone for tuning in tonight for our chat on Lucifer. It's been a lot of fun. Again, make sure you subscribe to the Gnostic Informant and check out Neil's video on Lucifer. And please go subscribe to Lady Babylon. Ammon does regular lectures, Wednesday night Bible study, and Friday night Satanic Initiation. So thank you everyone, and Hail Satan.
Hail Satan.
Hail Satan.